It's 6 o'clock. I'm going to call to order the meeting for the Keystone Heights Airport Authority. It is July 30th. It is 6:01, and we do not have internet. We have some issues with our internet. Last week, I know they've already replaced some parts, but we're still having issues, and so we will not be streaming tonight. But
Charlie is recording.
Pardon me?
Charlie is recording, and I'm just going to send it out.
Perfect. All right. So with that, I'll ask everyone to please stand. Let's do our prayer and pledge allegiance. Let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, we pause to give you praise, give you thanks for all of your blessings to us. We thank you for the freedom that we exercise as Americans to meet, take care of business of the airport. Lord, we pray for our first responders. We pray for those in the military who are in harm's way, that you keep your hand of protection upon them. Give us wisdom tonight as we do the business of the airport. We give you praise for it all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Ms. Craig, will you call roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kirkland.
Present.
Mr. Pryor.
Here.
Mr. Dagenau.
Here.
Mr. Ludwig.
Here.
Mr. Seamer.
Here.
And Ms. Hall.
Here.
Okay, as you had received from Mr. Kuhn earlier, there was one agenda that went out, and then he emailed out to us another amended agenda, which included some items that Ms. Hall had and she wanted to share with the board. So what I would like to do is, since we're talking about an amended agenda, we didn't get Ms. Annie Knock from Reddish and White CPAs on that agenda to share with us the audit. So I would like to add that to the amended agenda as well. So I think the first thing we need to do is to have a motion to approve adding the audit to the amended agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, we need a motion then to approve the amended agenda, which we will use tonight.
Make a motion to approve the amended agenda for this evening's meeting.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion, questions? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. So we will move forward with the agenda then that, the last agenda that Mr. Kuhn sent out to us. We do have 2 public comments tonight. These are from individuals that could not be present, and Mr. Kuhn will be reading those. And as listed on our public comment cards, those items that are raised won't be responded to tonight, but we can take specific items out of those public comments and then include those in the September agenda. So, Mr. Kuhn?
Yeah, so the first one is from Mr. Grant Hooks. He's in corporate hangar number 3. He said he was unable to attend tonight because he did have his last flight with the Navy today after 22 years of service.
Nice.
So he was flying the P-8, the 737 that does what these planes used to do. I'm going to share some pictures. He had some nice pictures to share of his final flight and stuff like that. I thought it was really neat. Anyways, he says, "My name is Grant Hooks, owner and operator of the Distinguished Flyers Flight School at the Keystone Heights Airport. We are a tenant in unit number 3, one of the 4 units in the corporate hangar located on Taxi Lane 5. We have concerns about potential rent increase in the upcoming annual budget. This will be our second rent increase since we have moved into the hangar approximately 2 years ago. We at Distinguished Flyers, in a single 60-foot by 60-foot unit, pay roughly 52% per month of what other tenants such as the firm pays for their 285 acres. We also pay our own electric monthly on our own meter. We do not receive any included service for pests besides a few sticky traps for mice. We have been officially requesting since March to have cracks in our drywall professionally repaired and still waiting. There have also been a couple of requests for assistance from the airport. I think he was saying, he was asking us, with upgrading lighting in the hangar with the distinguished flyers offering to pay for materials with little to no progress on that request. 2 yearly budget discussions ago, we and at least one other tenant in corporate hangar requested for the septic system to be completely connected as we desired to build out our own spaces at our expense. We were told maybe next year's budget. We desired to spend money on improvements of our spaces owned by the airport in order to have a more professional, comfortable, clean space to the ultimate benefit of the airport. It's unfortunate that the T hangar and corporate hangar tenants that we keep seeing rate increases while other larger tenants, businesses on the airport may not due to lease structuring. We are a small business operating on a very tight margins in order to remain competitive in the current market. Rent increases and fuel profit increases all work against our thin margins and abilities to operate at the Keystone Heights Airport. Unfortunately, the demand for flight training in this area isn't as great as in nearby areas such as Jacksonville. Therefore, Distinguished Flyers is against any rent and fuel profit increases and requests the airport board seek other ways to balance the budget. Grant Hooks, owner-operator, Distinguished Flyers. The second is from Nick On, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. He's in corporate hangar number 2. My name is Nick On, and my wife and I are the tenants in corporate hangar 2. We understand that an increase in rent is likely a discussion point for tonight's meeting. While the increases were inevitable from time to time, this will be the second in a relatively short time. I would like to point out that other tenants pay similar amounts for much larger premises. There are a number of outstanding issues regarding the corporate hangars, which if there is to be an increase, then it would be reasonable to ask if these could be addressed. Firstly, we were told that a sewer hookup would be done a few years ago. If we were to build a bathroom in our hangar, this would be an asset for us and in the future for whoever takes over if we leave. I did offer to fund this and have it repaid by reducing my monthly hangar bill until it was paid back. Also, the lighting would be improved a great deal if we could have LED lights similar to those in corporate hangar number 1. These types of lights are cheaper to run, and we do pay our own electricity bills. One other issue is fuel. It has always been at a price that benefits the tenants and visitors with a profit margin to cover the cost of the equipment. Of late, it seems to have increased beyond that arrangement. I think it would be reasonable to increase the cost of operating here on businesses who are paying a much lower rate per square foot rather than individual pilots in T and corporate hangars. Yours sincerely, Nick On.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kuhn.
Yes, sir.
As you heard, there are some issues within those public comments that I've asked Mr. Kuhn to look at, and we'll address those in the September meeting. All right? Okay, moving forward, let me get back to my agenda here. Consent agenda. We have approval of the May and June 2024 financials, as well as approval of the June 4th, 2024 Keystone Heights Airport Authority Board meeting minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we're going to have Miss Annie Knott with Reddish and White share with us the audit this year. So, Annie, take it away.
All right. My name's Annie Knock, and I'm a CPA with Reddish and White. I've got about 10 years of auditing experience now, and was training under Brad before he abruptly left us this year. We are moving forward, and I'd like to start out by saying that the audit was another successful audit. There was a clean opinion, no new findings, and you guys have a strong balance sheet still. It was also a single audit this year, so it's a little bit thicker, and there was some more testing that was required in relation to the grant and the grant projects. So I'm just going to point out a few highlights. If you want to follow along, there are some copies there, and I'm going to start on page 10. Also, feel free to interrupt me if you have questions, if anything comes up. So this is the income statement, and the numbers to note here is you're going to see up at the top in the revenue section, there was a big increase in fuel sales. And then if you go down a little bit, there was an increase in your miscellaneous income. And that this year, it seemed to be because there was a little bit of sponsorship income, and there was also the sale of a couple assets. And that's all in that miscellaneous income line item. And there was no timber sales this year, so there's no income related to that. Now, if we go down to the expenses, the items to note here is there was an increase in the cost of fuel sold, which is expected. If there's an increase in the fuel sold, you're going to have an increase in the cost of the fuel sold typically. Then you had an increase in your professional fees this year. Then you had a couple one-time costs, like the special events cost and the utility feasibility study in 2023. So that brings us down to about the middle of the page, and you'll see a line operating income, and it's showing a negative number. So usually when you see a negative number as an operating income, it might lead you to believe that the organization isn't doing well. But you need to consider the large depreciation expense that y'all have. And that's depreciation of all the infrastructure that's been put in, mostly with grant funding. So you do have that depreciation figure counting against you here. Ideally, we'd love to see an operating income, positive figure, but you'd have to increase your fees quite a bit to cover that entire depreciation amount. And then if we move down a little bit more down the page, you'll see capital grants. That was the amount received as reimbursements for the runway or the taxi lane and the lighting projects that were going on during 2023. So if you want to flip over to page 11, that's the statement of cash flows. And the only thing I want to point out on this page is the first subtotal. This is the cash results of your operations. And because depreciation expense isn't money coming out of the pocket of the airport, you'll notice that the actual cash results are positive. So this year was positive 291, last year was positive 126. If these numbers were negative over time, that would be a cause for concern, but they are consistently positive each year. So that's all there is on that page to really go over. If you want to flip back 2 pages to page 9, that's going to be the balance sheet. And the main things that changed this year are all related to those large grant projects that are ongoing. So the first thing I'd like to point out, it's up in the asset section. It's the line due from other governments restricted. That's the amount that the airport is owed in reimbursements for their grant projects as of September 30th, 2023. So that's why that number is significantly higher than it was last year. Then if you move down to the capital assets section, which is a little bit further down, you'll see the capital assets increase quite a bit. Again, that is for the grant projects. And both of the ones I'm talking about, the lighting and the taxi lane, were not complete at the end of the year. So they're sitting in construction in progress. So when they're complete, which I'm assuming will be 2024 year end, they'll move out of construction in progress and go to another asset line, and they'll begin being depreciated. So that depreciation expense you can expect to get a little bit higher next year. Moving down to the liability section, which is about halfway on the page. The next thing I want to point out is accounts payable restricted, that line item. Again, this is for the grants. These are all the grant project expenses that were owed at the end of the year. And that entire number, the 167, is included in the amount that is also receivable that we just talked about. So all these grants are reimbursable. So everything spent gets repaid. And that is pretty much it as far as highlights on the balance sheet. Overall, it's a strong balance sheet, and what Brad taught me is a good measure of that is using the current ratio, which is your current assets divided by your current liabilities. and a ratio of 1 or higher is considered good, and the airport's at a 4.9. So it's overall doing pretty well. And again, clean opinion, strong balance sheet, no new findings, and that's really significant this year with the single audit because we have to do a lot more testing, especially when it comes to compliance with the grant agreements. And we found nothing that needed to be reported or disclosed. If you want to see some single audit stuff, pages 26 and 27 have the schedule. So 26 shows the different grants that were awarded, the total amount that they're approved for, and the actual expenditures during the year. And you can see that the taxi lane was funded by a few different grants. And there was quite a bit of progress made on a lot of, 2.2 million during the year in project costs. And then on the next page, 27, this is another required statement with the single audit. And this is just to say that we had no findings. This whole schedule is just saying that everything was clean, good, we've had nothing to report there. So that's basically it as far as the financial highlights. Does anybody have any questions? Anything stuck out that you wanted to ask
So,
about?
when you say that there were no findings,
Right.
it sounds like basically what's being said is there were no errors that were found. Is that correct?
Absolutely. There were some reclassifications that were made, but that's not necessarily an error. It's not wrong to record the expense over here when it maybe should have been right here.
Yeah.
And those, I believe, if I remember correctly, were very minor too. It was just, I want to say like a
Or shall we
$3,000
say
just move.
errors that would throw it out of whack.
Right. There was nothing that we needed to report. How about that? And when we did the grant compliance, you know, we go through and we read the agreements and we read all of these rules and we check to see, you know, everything is going as it should. And we found nothing that was notable there at all.
Very
Everything,
good.
if I
Very
needed
good.
something, right there. It's quite nice. Because when there are findings, it makes it a lot more complicated.
Mm.
So,
Not think that's a credit to our staff. It's a
Yes.
credit to Annie and Brad while they were still with us, of just looking things over and always giving us the guidelines and giving us the advice of what needed to be done. And we did this in conjunction with our CPA, Rebecca Williams, who does our monthly reconciliation. So a credit to all of them, a credit to Annie. I mean, she's had a lot of experience, but she's new to an airport. So it was a learning experience for her. And Charlie, I've got an ATPT prepared for the upcoming city council meeting.
Okay.
And I gave the wrong number. I said we were a $14 million entity and we're a $16 million entity according to page 9.
Well,
So-
I'm kind of jealous of your audit report. Ours was exactly.
Can I ask one question?
please.
What is on page 28, that 14 says Keystone Heights Airport Authority was determined not to be a low-risk auditee. What does that mean?
low risk oddity means that I'm trying to think of the right way to word this. The low risk would mean basically you don't have these project costs. So if you're high risk because you have these project costs going on. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I don't know if that was really clear.
So we
But
could
I
have been
can-
we could have been a low risk.
A low
But
risk would
project-
not
but we
have.
were not a low risk.
You're not a low risk, exactly. And I can get you the professional language that explains it a little better than whatever that was.
That's okay.
Oh,
Also, another thing to note, so this is up until October of '23, this audit is for the 22-23 year timeline. So that 167,000 or whatever that was outstanding on that project, I'm sure is by now closed out.
it should
Wouldn't
be.
you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was hanging, so that's a
Yeah.
good thing. But I've got a question on depreciation.
So
Sure.
this is, remember now, this is October 1, 2022 to September 30th.
Oh, to September
2023.
30th, not October.
2023.
Right, so that would have been probably resolved by now, but
Oh, yeah.
this was during that time period. On depreciation, I retired from a power plant over in Palatka, and I know we did it too. We had capital assets that we depreciated over time, but those hangars back there will reach a point that they're no longer depreciable. Is that correct?
Yes, they will be depreciated to zero or their salvage value.
Okay.
We do not have salvage values on the books for those.
And when that occurs, depreciation is a tax tool, isn't it, or is it not?
It can be, yes.
Okay. So does that mean that we will realize at some point, at least on those, maybe paying more taxes to the county? Am I understanding that right, how that works?
I'm not totally sure about that.
Even as far as ad valorem taxes?
Yeah, I just wonder, because you always hear about depreciation, but if you depreciate and depreciate and depreciate, at some point you reach the sum of zero.
There is a time limit for each thing.
Right.
When I had my business, I could only depreciate my equipment over a 5-year period
Right.
because they figured that after 5 years it wasn't going to be worth anything.
And we had some things there at the plant, believe it or not, that were on a 32-year depreciation cycle, but
Sure.
smaller assets were probably, like you say, like 5
Yeah.
years. I've just always wondered, never really had the opportunity to ask, but there certainly must be a benefit in the depreciation of assets in our favor. And I guess what I'm asking is when
It's
we
in
get to
paying
that point-
taxes,
So when we
but
get
not
down-
ad valorem.
Okay,
It won't have anything to do with your ad valorem
okay.
taxes. It's the federal income tax that you're depreciating,
Okay.
and that's where you benefit from. Is that not correct?
Yes, the entity would have less value when it's depreciated all the way to zero. So if a tax was based on the value of the property, it would decrease. Depreciation expense can be used as a business expense or an expense here that would act towards lowering your income tax liability. But as far as ad valorem taxes, I'm not totally sure.
And to obtain the depreciation number, one of the things that Craig and our financial person does is they maintain, with oversight from Reddish and White and with Rebecca Williams, there's a listing of all of our assets and those values and when they were bought and then what that depreciation looks like. So all of that's a part of what they look at when they do our audits every year. That changes, those numbers change simply because there is depreciation.
And you guys have a lot of projects going on, and that increases the infrastructure assets that you have. So there's usually a lot going on in your capital assets area.
Well, and we get new buildings periodically, so those may be nearing their term of depreciation, while this building over here was just built 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And in fact, this building probably
Yes.
is now on its own. So you've got these things running concurrent, but they have different starts and finishes, I assume,
Absolutely.
based on when they
yes.
were built, so.
Yes.
Okay.
And one of the things I've asked Annie to do when she presents this at the city council meeting is to emphasize that depreciation, describe what the depreciation is, because previously we have had a local newspaper have a headline that we lost that amount of money, and it was like $640-something thousand years ago, and that was a headline like the airport loses, and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, and he was citing the depreciation number, which isn't a loss, it's part of
But at a quick
value.
glance, it looks like we lost the money, like she described, she clarified,
Right.
it's not what it seems in the sheets.
I always told Brad to do that too, only because it just happened at one time, and it's like, okay, let's make sure everybody understands, for us or any entity.
Yeah,
that has
it's the
depreciation.
cost of doing business.
Exactly.
Right.
If you buy something, the federal government has a schedule, and it says this is what,
Here's what you can do,
this
here's our
is,
rules.
this is the rules,
Here's how you play
and
the
you're
game.
gonna get to deduct it because of its aging.
Right.
Because at one point, you're gonna have to replace it.
Yeah.
All right, any more questions for Miss Annie? All
I
right.
would just say thank you. You did a good job again as usual.
Well, so did y'all.
Well, thank you, Andy, and,
No problem.
this was different. For those of you that may not know, Brad Million, that normally would help and had worked at Reddish and White a long time, passed away suddenly, and,
Oh.
so
Sorry, I should have explained.
she literally got stuck with not just our audit, the city audit.
He didn't run off,
He
Passed
did not
away.
run off,
Right.
unfortunately.
Okay.
But, so, again, I just commend Annie and Reddish and White, because everybody there at the CPA office stepped up and helped, so credit to them, and thank you very much. Y'all been great to work with. Brad was always, a toughie, but that's okay. We like that.
He
And-
was.
And he's done it for years, and listen, guys, that's why we have a good audit. Because of just what he put in place and what he recommended, so, again, good job all around. So, Annie, thank you.
No
You
problem.
don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting if you want.
I'm at the head of the table. I kind of like this. Thank you for having me and
Thank-
for the kind words, and I will see you at the city meeting.
I'll be there.
Thank you very much.
If y'all think of any questions, feel free to reach out.
We'll do it.
Thank you, Andy.
Thanks, Andy.
Have a good night.
All right. Moving on to the one item that I have. Mr. Kuhn and I have been going through our employee personnel manual. One of the things that we discovered was that on the vacation and sick leave accrual number, we were using literally a number, and all of this came over from the city, from our history, and so that number had been in our system, our QuickBooks, and so when I first saw this, and Craig got with Lori on it, we saw that the number that it should have been is a little bit different. For the vacation, I'll give you an example. For the vacation, it's like 3 hours per pay period, and it should have been 3.077 hours. And when you do the math on that, then that works out to be basically 80 hours or 10 days of vacation. There are 3 levels within the manual that we're looking at. One is less than 5 years of service, and then 5 year up to 15 years, and then a 15 and beyond. So those numbers go up with each of those levels of tenure. So what we want to do is bring that to the board for your knowledge and your approval, and we'll make that change, and that will become effective October 1st, our fiscal year. So, any questions about that?
So, you said it was what? It should be 3.17?
No, 3.077,
Okay.
and it was 3 right now.
I think it was 3.01.
Yeah,
And when we did the math, it came out to be like 78 point something hours a year, not 80.
yeah.
Okay, and then what is the hourly rate for the next year?
So for the 5 year and beyond?
Is this in front of us? I'm sorry.
No.
No,
Okay.
I didn't have it.
So we're not gonna have that to look at to vote on tonight?
Yeah. If we make a copy of this is just a page out
I
of
can
the,
make a copy.
Yeah, can we
Out
just
of
do
the
this so
manual.
we could see it?
Sure.
sure.
And this
It'd be
is
easier.
following the city's guidelines?
And it was a very old city
Yes,
personnel policy.
yes, which
There you
No, it
go.
wasn't Charlie, that's what I
Well,
which
I
was
haven't
then-
rewrote it yet.
Well, that's where I was gonna go.
But in essence, you say that the way it was input into the QuickBooks system, it wasn't calculating correctly.
No, it was calculating, but with a number that was lower. Like Craig just said, the 3.01 came out to be like 77, 78 hours.
They were getting short.
And,
Versus 80?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Now, they still got paid for 80. If they took off, whatever the time, they still got paid for it. So, but it's just one of the things that as we were walking through that, and we saw the difference between what Lori had in QuickBooks and what we were actually had in the personnel manual,
Mhm.
then we wanted to get it corrected.
Right, right.
And Charlie, I think y'all are in the process of revising your personnel manual
Yes.
as well.
I found one on the shared drive. I really liked it. Just wasn't the one that had been adopted a million years ago. So
Okay. So the other thing too is because, as Charlie just shared, you know, it's an older document. And so I was gonna get with Charlie. I know with Bradford County, they hired a firm that handles employment type contracts and reviews manuals. The city of Stark also had one, so there's two resources there. I didn't know if Charlie might have one, because what we want to do is finish this draft version that Craig and I are working on, and then have somebody, even talk to somebody at the Human Resources at Clay Electric, have them look at it so that we make sure that we've got all the Fair Labor Act, got all of the other either state or federal requirements in place in our manual, basically so we'll have the latest and greatest. And we're gonna bring that back to the board for review as well and approval. We'll send you out the whole manual so you can read through it, and we'll take action on that. But I just wanted to, now we don't have to, excuse me, we still have the September meeting, if y'all want to just table this until the September meeting. But I just wanted to make you aware that this is one of the items that, basically the only thing we found in our manual so far that needed a revision.
Okay, question. So I understand it was found that a correction needs to be made to the calculation basis for this.
It's the
Right.
accrual rate number
The accrual rate.
that needs to be revised
Right,
for both vacation time and sick leave.
okay. But my question is why would there be a vote required for anything? Just make the correction.
It's an employee manual.
It's part of the employee manual. I just want to bring it to the board for,
That's fine.
you know,
Probably should.
I mean, if the board agrees, if they're all in agreement that we just want to make that change, then we can make the change.
And I
Because
didn't really dig into it, but is the employee manual a function of the board or the airport manager?
I would say because it's a monetary thing, I think it would be a board thing.
Okay,
If it was non-monetary, like you gotta wear safety shoes or,
okay.
you know, but I think, I mean, this
Yeah,
is a
I'm fine with that.
monetary
I
issue.
was just asking.
One thing I'd like to say now, when you're in the military, what is full retirement, 20 years?
All right?
Yes.
Okay, so, and different companies, you're vested at different points, but again, the only thing I can revert back is to my time with the power plant, but I would like to see B change from 5 years to 15 years. I would say 5 years to 10 years, and then anything after 10 would start the 6.153. And the reason I say that is if you were in the military, at 10 years, you're halfway towards your retirement. I know it's not the military, but I think as hard as our people work, I think I'd like to see them get those. I mean, you're talking about 5 additional days a year.
Which B are you talking about, section 1 or section 2?
So on paragraph D,
in the
under
middle of the
section 1,
page, middle of the page.
D.
Where it says
Okay,
time of
D.
service?
D, I thought you said B, I'm sorry.
the accrual rate under B, I personally like to see that change from 5-year anniversary date to 10 years. And then make C 10 years and up. But I'd open that for discussion.
Oh, so 5-year date to 10 years is what you're
Correct.
saying?
Yes, so when you get to 10 years, you'd be getting 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Rather than having to wait
I'd
till
probably agree
15
with that.
years. 15 years is a long time.
It is.
I don't think
And-
we've have we had anybody here 15 or and beyond?
That's why they've been quitting, they don't get vacation.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Well, that
But, I
answers
mean,
that.
I'd entertain
I
a
mean,
discussion.
it-
I think that's a
I think
reward.
Jim Young may have been here between 5 and 15 years. I don't remember how long he was
Maria
here.
made it to 12 years, I think she was here.
Yeah.
But you're right, 15, I don't think we've seen.
Yeah, and
So
I
Scott, what
agree
you're
with you.
suggesting is B, that it should be, word 5-year anniversary date to 15?
No.
To 10?
To 10.
To 10.
Everybody,
Suggestion.
I would say that the way you have it is kind of standard, even with the private companies, because I know this is my experience, is that, 4 weeks usually doesn't start until about 15 years. And I was just wondering what the
Well,
city,
it's not 4 weeks starts at 15, it's 3 weeks starts at
Well,
15.
This was the city's. Now, I don't know if that's still the same
no, it's got 3 weeks
Schedule.
from 5 to 15.
that they're using.
That's
Oh,
two.
I'm sorry,
Is
you're right.
that
I'm
right?
reading
Wait a
it
minute, 5 times
incorrect.
3?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah, yeah.
apologize.
So that's 3
So
weeks
at
from
10
5 to 15.
years, you'd get 4 weeks. Maybe you're right, maybe it should stay the same. I was
No.
misreading.
No, at 15 you would get 4.
I thought you had to wait
Right.
till
Yeah.
15 to get 3 weeks.
No, no, no,
Maybe
no.
we should leave it.
Yeah, 5 to 15 is 3 weeks, so, yeah. And I'm assuming that's probably what the city does too.
This was out of their,
Mm-hmm. No, this
I'll
is
tell you
theirs, huh?
this.
yeah.
I had 36 years with Seminole, and when I left, I got 7 weeks a year of vacation. I was very fortunate. And then we had holidays, so I got over 2 months a year, you know, but that was their package.
Apparently
So-
in the early 2000s, they decided worldwide
Yeah.
to do a cutoff, and I missed it by like
Right.
a year of getting 6 weeks, never to be
Yeah.
seen again.
They were good to us, but,
Now, one of the things just to note too, you see it in italics there, temporary employees don't receive vacation time or sick leave.
you mean part-time?
Part-time, what did I say?
Well, temporary,
It's
part-time.
temporary,
yeah.
part-time,
Both
and
are
Temporary,
non-permanent.
I'm non-permanent.
Correct.
Mhm.
So just as information, so, all right, y'all wanna, yes, sir?
I, on the sick leave, it's kind of ambiguous about the way it states. Of 1 working day per full calendar month of service.
That's where that multiplier comes up with, apparently.
So I agree with you.
Oh,
That's
it's not
that.
quite 8
I
hours,
mean,
so
This is one
because
of,
you're talking years at the top for that, and then you're talking about months at the bottom in the sick leave. And I think that it should follow, the sick leave should follow the same timeline. Less than 5 years, you get 1 day a month. You know, 5 to 15 years, you're going to get 3 days or 2 days a month. You know, whatever we come up with. But to try to figure out the month of how many months that somebody's there, are we going to, you know, it's so far wide open on interpretation.
well, I agree with you, and this is one of the parts that we were going to revise that verbiage, because it didn't make a lot of sense to me when I first read it, and I think that's why they came back and put the or, and they put the 3.6923 per pay period. So you got your calculator, are you crunching that?
Is there
Times 26?
That's
26 pay
95 hours
periods,
a
or is
year.
it
26
more
for
than that?
bi-weekly, yeah.
Well, I come up with, if I multiply 26 times 3.6923, I come up with 95.9 hours, so that's 96.
That's more than what you're getting.
So 96 divided by 12,
That seems a lot.
I know,
That's 8 hours
before
per
Clay
month.
Electric changed, how much?
that comes out
No.
right. It comes out to 8 hours per month. Is that what we were talking
That's
about?
almost, yeah.
That's a day per month,
And 96
Yeah.
hours
Right.
is 8 times
Yep.
12.
Right.
Yeah.
so
right.
that does work
Oh,
on math.
you're right.
Yep,
But just
That's a
the
lot.
way it's worded, the verbiage,
yeah.
I'm not arguing about
Mhm.
the amount, I'm just saying the way it's worded, it, you know,
I agree with you. When I first read it, I read it and got that kind of, you know, turn your head a little bit and say, what did that say? But here's another thing too, just while we're talking about this. At Clay Electric, at one time they had vacation and sick leave, and then they went to just personal leave.
That's
It was
what we
all lumped
did.
together. I think Seminole had the same
We
thing.
did that
I don't know what it is with the fire.
we
I don't know
had,
what your union.
at one time, we had
Most organizations.
2 leave banks for personal leave plus a sick leave bank. So we actually had 3. And then they consolidated it down to just 2, a sick leave bank and a personal leave
Okay.
bank. And I guess it's still that way now.
pretty much.
Yeah.
I tell you what happened at Seminole is when they did that combined thing and made it all personal leave, the call-ins for being sick dropped dramatically. It was an incentive for the employees. Now, the only problem was you had those employees that would get the flu and they'd come on into work. That way they could use that for vacation and then they get everybody else sick. But, I mean, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But
Yeah. So just,
You have the same problem with this one as the dropping of the decimal points, so you end up with the odd thing at the end, like 95 point something something instead of 96,
96.
which would be 12 days a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, of sick leave.
yeah,
Now, one thing that amazes me, though, it can be accumulated with no maximum limit restrictions.
the sick leave.
The sick leave, well, we had that too. We did. It was the vacation. You couldn't carry over so much in there. That's addressed here too?
It is. Annual
Yes.
leave may be accumulated under E.
Okay,
240 hours,
Right.
okay.
and that's standard. That was at the fire department
Yeah,
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think a lot of this is pretty standard.
It is.
And I'm not sure, and this is another reason we wanted some HR expert to look at our draft, our final draft version before we vote on it, just to make sure that we're within whatever the regulations are for all this. So,
Can I ask one more thing?
certainly.
So was the multiplier for subparagraph A, the less than 5 years, was it the only one that was incorrectly being applied?
Yes,
So-
because we didn't have anybody else.
So the 4.615 didn't really apply to anybody except for Maria possibly, and it was being applied properly.
Correct.
But at 3.01, the employees were getting shorted a little.
Yeah, and well, as far as their accumulated time, but when they took the time off, they were still,
They were still
you know,
getting
paid for it.
uh,
One of the things
80
that
hours.
QuickBooks, the way it sets up is each employee is set up in QuickBooks. And for whatever their accumulation or accrual value is, like if we had someone that was in that 5 to 15, then that number is plugged into their particular account.
So was it messing up QuickBooks too, or
Well,
rounded off?
you know,
No,
sounds to me what could have happened is QuickBooks just rounded it to 3.1.
it's
Instead
0, point 0.
No, it's 0.01, it's over
Yeah.
6.
Oh, 0.1,
yeah.
6 more.
Yeah.
So just to correct this, we could go ahead and just do it if it's just that one line. I mean, if
Yeah.
everybody's in agreement with the rest, I don't see tabling it.
Other than
Just
just
correct it.
changing the verbiage in section 2B. I just don't like the verbiage on it. I don't mind the amount. I don't mind the amount, it's just the verbiage. It, you know,
Make it more clear instead
Yes.
of muddy.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Let's have a motion to approve the accrual rate numbers, those revisions, and then the verbiage corrections will be part of the whole draft package that we'll bring to the board of the whole manual to look at.
Okay.
Everybody good with that? I've got a note in here
That'd be
to,
fine.
Okay, I'll make a motion we adopt under Article 12, Section 1, Paragraph D, subline A, I guess it would be to change the multiplier from 3.01 to 3.077 hours per pay period.
I second.
all right, let me discuss something. Because we are in the process of revising this whole manual, that article may not be 12.
Oh,
As we're finding out things that need to be revised or added,
well, why
I'm
don't we wait?
just
Why don't I
saying-
just withdraw my thing and let's just wait
Why don't we table it until we have something
until
on?
you got it
The
where
whole
you want
thing
it,
is
and
done.
That way we can specify.
Yeah, I mean, because if we can't go off of this and make a motion off of this, then we can't make a
Then
motion.
we're gonna be changing. it
well,
again or
you
something.
could make a motion for the accrual rate itself without describing a section and a subsection in there. But it's whatever the discretion of the board is, I'm fine with. I just want us to be aware of that if we got that specific with our motion, with the revisions that are going on, some of this gets shifted. All right?
Well, the accrual rate's already here. It's already established.
Yeah, but his motion included under Article 12, Section 1, sub item D. And that may change as we're going through the revision process.
And this 3.077 has been changed.
I
on
see.
this. It's 3.0.
But it just seemed like all we need to do is just make the correction to the established accrual rate, which is already 3.077.
This-
Right.
you're
In the
looking at-
calculator.
This is the corrected
But
one.
it's 3.01 right now. This has already been corrected.
This
But it
is-
really doesn't matter because they've been paid anyway.
Let me just withdraw. Can I just withdraw my motion, Charlie?
Yes.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, I just withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Okay.
So we just table it till next month.
Okay,
Okay.
Table it
That way
till
it'll be
next month.
Less
All
muddy water.
perfect.
Be
We'll,
murky, but
we'll bring it back then
With all the
for the
corrections.
September meeting. All right, moving on the agenda, down to Natural Resources Conservation Chair. And Ms. Hall, before you start,
Yes.
I did provide Craig, after reading through all the documents that he provided in the packet.
Extensive grant, the extensive cost share, yeah, that was
Um,
a. that's a
And
big
one of the
package.
things that, well, the first thing that I was concerned about,
Mhm.
because it is a legal document,
Mhm.
I really would like to have our attorney, Jim Taylor, look over the document. There's a lot of references in the agreement that reference Florida statute.
Mhm.
And so, and then I've listed some other things there that, just concerns that I saw in the agreement. One of the other things that I know, because I've been involved with Craig in doing the budget, that the proposals that you put in there, and let me say this too, I'm all for getting our forestry management moving. You know, we've got the plan, and I really appreciate all that you've put together here too. But our budget can't support that this year as well. We would have to substantially probably reduce what you want to do, and then I understand too, a lot of this has to be done, like the spraying has to be done, and then behind that, the chopping, and there's this whole process, and I guess it's seasonal, better to do it at certain times of the year than other times of the year. So my concern is, I'd like for you to share with us about it. I just don't know, based on the fact that we need Jim to look at the agreement, that, and the budget constraints, that we might not be able to go forward with it tonight.
Do you understand that what I have is for the 25 budget?
No, I thought it was for the 20.
No.
That was the one
Well-
thing that changed, yeah, because after discussing with a consultant or whatever, any work we have done will actually be in October, which would be 2025 budget.
Well, this is the 25 budget. that's
Well, we're
being
doing the
presented.
24,
You mean
25 now.
26 next
You-
year?
I'm doing
you-
25, 26.
Okay.
This would occur in October, and I believe the new budget is October 1, correct?
Right.
So that was the good thing that happened. That was one of the changes that I was telling you about. And so anyway, so that kind of changes things, makes it a little bit better.
Yes. Yeah, because we can definitely
Sure.
budget then for the proposal, the cost proposals.
So I don't know, I've never dealt with these cost shares and everything. And I know you have some misgivings about some of these things that you were worried about. But I also know that they deal with government entities quite a bit. So like government entities are actually listed as part of the people who are eligible to do this stuff. So I'm assuming they've got stuff worked into there, you know, that doesn't give heartburn to, you know, like the financial consequences and things like that. But when I go into it, I'll learn more when I sit down with them and kind of talk. Okay, now if we do this, then you know, explain this to me how this works. So I do need to get more information about that, which was my next step of what I would do if the board wanted me to pursue that in order to try and get the cost share. It was just a lot of documentation. I mean, it was like I think y'all need to look at this because I really don't.
it's overwhelming.
Yeah, it's a lot. It makes your mind numb. But anyway, but what I would like to do is kind of familiarize y'all with sort of where we are. Let me pull up my own agenda thing.
Well, as I looked through it also, it just raised a lot of
Yes.
questions that I don't understand the way it's written.
Right here, so this will have to be changed too if it's the 25, 26, won't it? It says contract period, the effective date of this agreement.
Yeah, so this is actually, I think is based on site preparation and planting taking place between October and April, because most planting takes place. Usually, you really want to be done planting by March 1, and
Right.
I'm assuming that that's what that's built around.
Well, I'm just looking
Yeah.
at the year,
Mhm.
because you said if we're gonna do this in 25 or 26, it would be April of 26, wouldn't it?
No, it would not, because we would start in October 24, and we would go do, the things I'm proposing would end by September of 25. So this would only affect the first part of it, and I think they have some verbiage in there about extending it. So they're not gonna cut off somebody, if somebody's in the process of site preparing their land and planting it,
Right.
they don't want to cut them off if they've only got the site prep done and then not continue into the planting. So that's the other thing. I noticed some words, some paragraphs around that.
Right.
That's another thing I would check on. It's kind of like, if you do it this year, does that guarantee then it would continue and cover my costs for the following year so that I can get it to where you want it to be, which is that it's planted?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking in terms of, we're trying to approve the new budget.
Mhm.
So the new budget will go from,
October 1 of 2024 to September 30th,
Of 2025, yeah, that's right.
2025.
I'm sorry, no, but.
That's
April
mid-year.
falls- Yeah.
That's mid-year, yeah. So that's one thing that's different
So
about
if
it.
we're approving that and we don't have the money, then I assumed you said this would be kind of 25 and 26. Maybe I'm getting confused.
I think that I don't think it's 25, 26, it's actually 24. I mean, that's the problem with fiscal versus calendar.
Right.
We're basically talking about the 25 fiscal year, which starts with October 1 through September 30th.
Okay,
So we're talking about the 2025 fiscal year.
okay.
So that is the budget though that would be proposed tonight.
Yes, this is budget that I wanted to propose. Did you have I don't know, I think you thought you gave me, did we have a printout of the list of the agenda stuff?
No,
I
but
don't
you're gonna
know.
look here.
Yeah, I can just look
Here
at
if it
that.
helps you.
Yeah, just scroll down, that's what I was, nope, that's not it either,
Here,
that's okay.
that's what you need to.
Is that what you want?
Yes, that's what I wanted. Okay, so let's start off with the very first part. So one of the things I handed out was a map, and let's see if I can find
This
mine.
map?
Yes. So this map is my best rendering of what we have right now. And if you look at it, so basically I've taken the airport and the grade purple part, that's not part of what's part of the forest management. That's the airport
That's the
plus the
airfield
development
proper,
area and
right.
all that. So everything that is timber management lies outside of that. And you can kind of see the boundaries of it kind of goes up to here, over, down, around, and then it kind of goes around the lake.
Right.
Okay, so what I found whenever I sat down and basically went through Google Earth and the history of the different things was I was estimating like the ages and everything like that, and discovering through the plan that Rex had put together all the areas that had been left after they were cut, they were not put back into production.
They're just wild growth.
Yes, and so what I came up with was about 345 acres, which is about 37% of the total acreage. So I divided it into a couple different groups. So you've got the red, which is a cutover area. That's one group, that's 151 acres. The orange, which is another cutover group, which is about 176 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And then the yellow is a group I don't know what to do with. And so I did not include it in my plan because that is actually the field that's right out here and another area that was cut.
Right.
Actually, it sits just over that way.
Right, it's over there by
Yes.
Crystal Lake Camp.
So this, they're pretty
Oh,
much
oh,
contiguous
okay.
right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the field
I know
and then
what
an
you're
area
saying.
that's
You're
been
right.
cleared.
You're right.
So just a question for me is the field determined that's what you want it to stay that way and there's a purpose behind that, or is that also something, because I mean, obviously it's been opened up,
In
yeah,
fact,
and
isn't
very,
the celebration, the 100-year celebration gonna occur part
Yeah,
of
the
it there?
kickoff.
okay,
So we
okay.
kind of envision that being a place if we ever had bands come into play. We
Okay.
used it for the 80th anniversary for car parking.
Okay,
We could also, if a camp had something going on and they wanted to lease the parking. So that was, I think, the intent when we did that.
This in particular for commercial development.
And right, it will go to that at some point.
The other parcel over here, going by the tent
Aircraft
toward the
storage
KHAA,
expansion.
that was also cleared, and we had a company at one time that was looking at wanting to lease half acre over there. So that's basically commercial industrial type development as well. And I would also think that anything along Airport Road, like some of the areas, the blue and the reds that are along Airport Road there on the south side, I think with the zoning that we had started working on, that a portion of that, not all of it obviously,
Leach
but a
road
portion
frontage.
back off the road, then could be for commercial development as well.
however, that probably is a number of years down the road, correct?
We don't know. We don't know.
Well, I guess what I would say is, based on us joining the getting approved to be a farm, a tree farm, is that we need to get these things, rather than letting them grow wild like they are, we really need to get them back into production, because there's a stipulation that really you're supposed to do it within a couple of years. And the other thing is that right now, it's a fire hazard. I mean, it really is. It is so overgrown, and I don't even know that it's not contributing to. Craig was telling me about the deer that he's starting to see along there and everything. I'm thinking we might get a benefit of kind of, if you reduce some of that cover, that maybe we might end up getting a benefit from that too. So my thinking was that the blue area is, I had the Florida Forest Service come out and look at it, and they agreed that they could do, with no cost to us, mitigation on that. So that part, because it's along the road and everything, they could go ahead and it's planted pine. I think, had that been thinned? I can't remember if it had been thinned or not. But anyway, they could actually mulch in between the trees, and they could bring that area on down.
Is
And
that the blue area?
that's the blue
Yeah.
area. It's
Yes.
19 acres
Yeah, I
right
think
there.
there's still some small pine in there. And
Yeah, there's some pretty good aged pine in that one, but they could do mitigation on that if y'all wanted me to go ahead and pursue that. And what I could do is I could email, I guess, they have an agreement that's pretty straightforward. It's basically one page that says, hey, yeah, you can do this, and you won't hold us liable. There's an indemnity clause, and
We did that for the
they
bird
basically
out
do
here.
it for us. Yes, it's probably, you probably did it for that too.
Well, I think we definitely should pursue anything that we can do with them that doesn't cost us anything.
Right.
Um,
Well, generally, that's only because we are so close to Camp Montgomery.
Right.
You've got to have that urban interface in order for that to take place. And this is really too overgrown for them to really be able to help us with the other parts, the parts in red. So that's kind of on us, and that's what I wanted to talk about, was to see what our options are for those areas along there. Because I think there's a benefit to doing it, regardless of if down the road, 10 years down the road you decide to develop it. I mean, you
Right.
still, you've at least got something growing there. May have value, I don't know, but I think there's other value to it too.
What, you mentioned fire mitigation, and it's been a long time. The only fire mitigation that was being done was disking along the fence line with blanding.
And that's a
And-
great thing for us to pick up there too.
Well, I think that's the reason too for the new device. What's it called? That y'all just bought.
The cutter, I think we got some
lane
sort of
shark.
cutter.
Yeah, the lane shark.
Mhm.
So I know they're working toward that, try to clear that up so they could get in there and,
Mhm.
and disc that. I guess my question is, does Florida Forest Service, do they do the plowing
Yes.
for the fire lanes?
Yes, that costs about $108 an hour for the equipment as it runs. Yeah, so that's what they have for a rate for that.
So like the areas, the
Mhm.
southerly areas of these red,
Mhm.
or, you know, down to the lake.
Mhm.
Of course, the Florida Trail, the old Florida Trail
Right,
goes through there,
I've seen that.
which is no longer there.
Right.
There's still some old markings probably of it,
Mhm.
but technically it's not. Would it be wise for us to spend some money to have some fire breaks so that we don't impede, I guess, if we had a fire over in the Camp Montgomery?
That would be part of the whole thing, is that, yeah, that would be part of it. So if you want to, well, Bobby had to leave, but let me get into what I have on the sheet. So basically, if you look at, I had two different scenarios. One was we take the whole 327 acres and we go ahead and we do aerial chemical application. So spray a herbicide on it because it's so tall, it's so thick that it would be cost prohibitive to go in there and try and do mechanical work of any kind. That would just be unreal. But we could do aerial, and then what would happen is like we could spray that in October. So basically you've got this is when you do all this with fiscal and all that stuff. So you basically got, so if we've got October 1, so if we did a spray here in October 1, then about June, and I'll have to find out when they want to do it. I know we typically do site prep burns in summer, but you have to have just the right conditions to do it. So then this would sit out, you would want it to sit out until June because it tends to work really, really slow. So you swear it's not doing anything, but then it just gradually it does. And that's because we're dealing with a lot of mature stuff, and it's the herbicide that would be used. So we'd start here, then we would burn in June, and then we would start another calendar year in 25. So this is 24. So this is fiscal 25. So we'd spray it, then we'd burn it here, and then you'd start another year. So then at the next budget, next year in October, I would want to put in the planting and the seedling cost.
They don't have to do mechanical removal after the burn?
No. That's the great thing about it. These areas that have laid out, they are pretty much very sandy sites. And the idea is that if you've burned it, a lot of this stuff is going to lay down. And if you can get a good ground, get continuous cover, you can burn. I mean, it is very effective for
All the
clearing.
stumps that are left over from the harvest that was done there, how do you get planting machines, or how do they do that? Do
Hand
they go-
plant.
Okay.
They recommend doing machine planting, but if you're dealing with an area that you didn't pull beds on or anything, that can be, you can't, machine planting is very rough. Nobody would want to do it because it would probably tear up their equipment.
Oh, yeah.
So the thing you have to
Well, that's
do
what I
is,
thought you'd have to go in and grind the stumps out or chip them out, but.
no, you leave them to rot.
and
So
and they'll go away.
even if you're
Right.
doing mechanical, you end up, they usually, if you've got them in rows,
They skip
they
a
do it
row
at
or get
45.
in the middle.
No,
Oh,
they do it
oh.
at 45.
Okay.
And then they pull them that way is
Okay.
generally how they deal with that. But yeah, you just basically leave the stumps. And the key too is when they cut it in your timber sale contract, you want them to be less than 4 inches. So that's not an issue. You would not want any high
Do they
stumps.
chop? Do they still do the chopping?
You
and like they
can,
used to,
and
for the stump issue and.
oh no, the chopping would be more because you have so much vegetation. Like if we had this stuff out here and it was only this high, that's what I would recommend. Go out there, chop it, burn it, you know,
Yeah,
and
that's
then.
already like 15.
Yeah, but this stuff is, I mean, I walked out through it. I mean, it's thick.
Yeah, it's
Yes,
bad.
it's very thick. And there is not, I won't say there's not any because I didn't walk over every square foot, but about the only pines you're going to see other than the ones that were left are right along the edge of the road because they've been choked out by everything else that's grown there. So that is not going to be something I don't think we have to deal with too much.
So does the herbicide also, what about the oaks, the hardwoods that were left there? Would those also be
Yes.
killed and then?
If there was, so one thing we could do is if there was actually something that was like a significant area that we're like, hey, this is we want to leave this little special area, whatever, we could always cut something out. Most of what I saw wasn't real exceptional.
Well,
Yeah.
that's because I didn't think, there's a few oaks, there's no like oak hammocks
No.
back out there.
No.
And that's why I was just.
We do have
curious.
some Okamics, but yeah,
Yeah,
those would
Yeah,
be
they're
ones
all
that
back
we would
over in
leave.
the air.
Yeah, they're back
Yeah.
northeast.
Yeah, so those are being left like they are, but I didn't see anything really significant. My biggest concern is that there were some big pines that were left back along the edge and everything, and they're scattered enough that you could plant under them. If they were any thicker, it wouldn't work, because the pines are shade intolerant, so I think we'd be okay though with what we have. And I asked Craig, and he didn't seem to think that having an aerial application would be a problem. It could be done in a day. And
No,
would be
but
done.
I've had corn sprayed on the
Yes.
airport before, so that's not.
What about the herbicide in the lake? Because I don't know if you're aware of this. There is a spring boil just on the left side, south side of Airport Road.
And I believe it's part of a drainage pattern, isn't it?
Goes out into the little lake, but what does that herbicide do to the lake? You say it's low yield or slow,
Well,
really slow?
well, no, what it is that, first of all, we would put buffers on all any kind of wetland, or drainage pattern or whatever, that's gonna have buffers on it.
Okay.
But this should not move. I
Okay.
mean, once you put it down or whatever, it shouldn't move, so
It's
it should not
established in the
hurt.
plant.
It should not hurt anything.
Okay.
And I noted too that drain down there, that thing is significant. I mean, it's like 30 feet or so down. It's like a gully. I mean,
Well, that's another
so
thing.
we're gonna have
Going
to
down
back
towards
off
the
from it a
lake,
little
yeah,
bit.
because those trees are holding. We talked to Herbie about that, and he said if we start removing those trees, we're gonna have a
Right.
cave in on the bluffs.
Right. So this was quite a bit. I believe that I was like, I'm trying to remember if it was 60 to 100 feet actually from the edge.
Okay.
So that's what I would suggest, is just to be extra sure, that we protect that, and I'll look too at the BMP manual, because for slopes and stuff they have, and there is a little bit of a slope going even down, before it drops off.
Right.
So we'd want to be sure we had a buffer on that. And the other thing is, because we're not doing mechanical site preparation, we're not disturbing the soil. So if
you
you're not
want that
disturbing the
silt
soil, the
fencing.
soil shouldn't move.
Yeah, okay.
So that's also a good thing, especially when we're dealing with sensitive areas out here.
And I personally, I know what you're saying about the development of Airport Road, but I always get back to preserve that down by the water. I'd like to see some trees, a buffer. Have some depth, maybe 200 feet from the highway that you can develop. But I don't want to see Burger King down there
Right.
on the little lake, with an asphalt parking lot. I don't think any of us do. But
And I think even in that proposed zoning that we started on, we put if I remember, it's like a 500-foot buffer off
That's
of
pretty
the
good way,
edge of the
so.
lake, purposely for that very reason.
so we can plant in that buffer zone for sure. And like I say, we'd plant all the way up to the highway, but we can clear
But
that
that
out.
might be left or something that has a buffer. Yeah, so what I probably would end up doing is probably running lines and digitizing in some way those lines, just to ensure, because that's typically how they work, is you send them, I don't know if y'all are familiar with shape files, but I would send them shape files, and those would be digitally, they would geo-reference those, and the guy, when he flies, he uses that for stopping points.
Right.
So then we get flight lines so that we can feel good that he didn't spray where he wasn't supposed to, or we have evidence that he did and that it was outside of what we said we wanted him to do. So anyway, so one of the reasons why I wanted to do all of it at one time was because, for one thing, I've already got a group that they gave me a commitment that they could do it for today's prices. If we wait, we don't know what the prices will be next year. Plus, we're delaying even further, trying to get this stuff back into production. I think it would look really good on us to go ahead and plant this stuff. And I do intend to ask for longleaf on it. That's one thing that they really push, is either longleaf or slash. And
Who does?
these, Florida Forest Service on the cost share. Or maybe it's the Department of Agriculture, whatever, on the cost share program. They have longleaf and they have slash. They've always leaned more toward longleaf because they see that as the most natural Florida species. And it's actually perfect for these sites. I mean, sometimes I don't agree with that, but I do agree. Perfect.
Is that the stuff you told us about
Yes.
that you can't harvest for like 50 years or something?
Now they
100.
they are slow growing. I don't, it depends on the site,
Yeah,
depends on
and-
how long it takes it to grow. It is slow growing. We may want to do a mix, You know, again, it comes down to, okay, what's our objectives? You know, what
Well, I'm
What do we
thinking,
wanna
and
do
I'm
with
just thinking
it?
out loud, but
Mhm.
if we go invest this money on that slow growth, and then 15 years down the road, we got businesses want to come in, we've just thrown that money away if we start cutting those trees down, whatever they are,
well, that's a fact.
you know?
The nice thing is if we can get part of this cost share program, because that's a different program where they will do, I think it's 50% on these, and they provide the seedlings and everything on them. But longleaf tends to be premium too. So, I mean, if you have it, it is very much desired. I mean, it's straighter, it's cleaner, you know, it is slower growing. But we could, and like I said, we could, you know, decide, okay, well, maybe here, because of the possible development, maybe we want to do slash, you know,
Yeah,
but
because I'm gonna be 153 to 163 when we do that.
I don't think everybody waits 100 years,
100
though. That's a
was
lot.
for the maximum growth on it,
Yeah.
where it is telephone pole size.
Right, right.
We've cut
The
some
way-
at 30 and 40, though.
Yeah, the way that Carlton explained it to me was you would thin it in between 10 and 15 years.
Okay.
And that would allow the rest of it to really pick up and grow. And then in another 10 to 15 years, you would cut the rest of it.
Okay.
It wouldn't be a clear cut at one time.
So even
Yeah.
at 15 years, there is value. In
Oh,
There can be,
absolutely.
there can be
Okay.
value. It would just be pulpwood. It wouldn't be some of the, you know, higher value.
I got you.
Like
Yeah,
salt,
it would
you
be
know.
pulp to begin with and then lumber, the second one.
Okay.
Well,
But-
I know there's the environmental thing, and I'm all for that. I guess my biggest thing is the ROI on timber, because, you know, they don't chip because, well, they don't chip as much as they used to, only because companies have gotten rid of steam boilers and they're replacing it with natural gas. So you don't have a demand for pulp or chip like you used to. And I think some of the building materials and things that are coming about too, you know, this building, for example, has got all metal studs in it. And so there wasn't a lot of wood, so that's why I think, and we don't know, because none of us have a crystal ball about what is the value of timber gonna be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. But regardless, so back to real world here in short time, short term. So we're looking at, for scenario one, about
Is
90.
do it all, yeah.
Yeah, that does everything, and the cost share, now that's the portion that we potentially could get.
That is the
From-
part that we would get reimbursed, hopefully, if we get now, one thing,
Well, as I read through the
Mhm.
cost share document, I just never could understand, in the wording, what is the airport's obligation to the state in this agreement?
what do you mean?
Well, I mean, they're gonna provide us with some reimbursement of funds for
They named,
something.
they said site prep, for site prep and planting. Those are both things that they would reimburse us for,
Out
do a
of
cost
pocket.
share on, yeah. Or out of
They're
pocket
just
on that.
promoting, trying to grow trees.
Right.
And maintain forest,
Mhm.
to avoid, and I would imagine if they have their money tied up, well, and then that comes the next question. If we get some of this cost share, do we have a term that we cannot touch those trees for a period of time?
5 years.
Okay, so if a business comes along and we've planted too close to the road, we may have shot ourselves in the foot, at least for that 5. So we just have to be careful.
5 years
when we're
isn't,
gonna-
yeah, 5 years, I think those pretty, you know, I mean, usually things don't happen that quickly. So I'm thinking the 5-year obligation is not that much. It's not that big of a burden, but, I mean,
So
so,
what you're saying,
Mhm.
what the airport's obligation would be then is whatever's planted,
You don't-
then
you
it's
don't-
not
cut
disturbed
down
for
to
5
5
years.
years.
That's
Right.
correct.
okay.
Mhm.
All
Yes, that would be what you were
And we
asking.
know there's a benefit to trees. Not only do we get the return, but it helps preserve our ecosystems. Plus,
Right, yeah.
trees absorb carbon
Yeah.
and all these different things.
Well, I'm just saying the way as I tried to read through it, I just couldn't glean out of it, what is our actual obligation in this whole thing?
Like, why are they doing this for us?
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as free money.
They
Yeah.
let all their
That is
fire
true.
aircraft park on our ramp for free for 5 years now.
And this is based on 250 acres as far as the cost
Okay,
share.
so yes,
That up to maybe,
that is the
they're
one.
not guaranteeing the 300 or the,
Right, so that's what I figured out here was, so if you look at the cost share of the scenario 1 and the cost share of scenario 2, that shows you the difference of, there is a negative to doing it all at one time, which is only 250 of it is gonna be cost shared in scenario 1. So if you do the whole thing, it's all in, okay, how quickly do we want to get this back in production? Is it worth, and it's $10,000 in the long run. Now, this is over a 2 to 3 year period. If you look at scenario 2, we would do the first 151 acres, which is the red area. That's the 151 acres.
All the red?
All the red.
Mm-hmm.
And then the orange is the other, which is 176 acres. So what you would do is you would stagger it, and you would have the 151 sprayed this year, and then you'd have the 176 sprayed this year, and then you'd be burning the 151 this year, and then you'd be burning. So that's what I've got staggered, and I've got the dates on there for it. Yeah, and then you'd be planting here the 151, and then down here, the following year you'd be planting the 176. So I've got out to the side of each one what budget year it would occur in, and then obviously still the same dollar amount. So if we didn't get any cost share, it's the same dollar amount. If we do get cost share, then you've got only 250 acres in the first scenario that gets. The rest you
you're
have
on
to
your own.
absorb,
Yep,
right?
you're on your
The rest you have to do yourself.
Well,
So,
and if we take some away from the road, if we take some away from the road, can we get it down closer to the 250?
well, I mean, bottom line is
You still have to
you could
do
do-
the herbicide on all of it, and you have
Yeah.
to burn all of it, but then when you go to plant,
Oh,
maybe
yeah,
set
I see
some
what you're
planting
saying.
back.
I think that what was the difference is like 70. I think it was 70. Yeah, I can't do any math tonight. It's 327 minus 250. So you basically though would be pulling out 77 acres, which is quite a bit.
That's quite a
Yeah,
bit,
in order
yeah.
to try and get it down to
You
that.
couldn't get rid of that much. You
Yeah.
could get rid of 15 acres or 20
Yeah,
acres.
that you could easily, do something smaller that way. So really, it's really which is most advantageous to us. As a forester, I lean toward getting it all done, but I do see that there is a negative in that. But then again, we could end up that once we get through all the paperwork and all that stuff, we can't get cost share anyway if we can't agree on the terms and stuff that are in the program, which is why I put the full amount on here, because what I would like to do is budget for the worst and hope for the best and apply to every cost share that we can to try and offset it.
So these cost shares appear to be like a 12-month period, is that right?
Well, he was just looking at the one there, and that one actually starts, you apply by the end of August. So it's basically only, September, October, November, December, January, February,
Nice.
March, April, 8. Yeah. And I have to go check on all of that.
So
Find out
there's
what's
different
about.
ones?
There are different ones. I think this is the one that we would kind of fall into though as a government entity. But if there's more, I'll check. And then this is like site preparation and planting, but then like the seedling one, there's also the cost share on that. It's a different, I think it's a different program from what I read. So there'd be different ones involved.
I got a question.
Yes,
Well, I guess we just need to get some more information then.
we do. However, the problem is that the budget has come up to the point where it was shocking me because the city's spending next month. They've got 3 different sessions in determining their budgeting and getting, is that correct? Y'all have 3 different meetings next month?
Yeah, I need to, and I always give myself an extra one just in case we can't get everybody on the same page of music in 2 meetings. We have a third one. But those are just for budget processing. And just as you had 2 public comments tonight, I had a meeting last week, Monday, to have public input on the budget before I began preparing it and to receive city council guidance. Nobody gave any public comment. I tend to over portion out public comment time because if anybody ever feels slighted, then you really do hear from me.
So we've been inquiring about a deadline, budget deadline. I've always had in my calendar, it's August 1st, that our budget has to be to the city. So that's why it's on our agenda tonight, and that we've sent out, to all the board to look at what we're proposing. So your budget's, because you got to,
We have
ours
to
has got
pass
to be with
it
yours
by
anyway.
September 30th to go into effect. And so the 2 actual budget hearings, Labor Day kind of messed up the beginning of September. So I backed one up to the week before Labor Day, and the other one's on like September 15th or 16th or something like that.
But Charlie, your budget's due to the state at a certain date too. I think it's before September 30th.
Yeah, so there's my recording on this calendar, the meeting here. I went through the statute, and whatever I put out in terms of dates was so that I could meet all those deadlines in the statute.
Okay.
So I think we're clean, and I looked at what they did last year and looked at what the City of Orange Park's doing, just so I'm kind of following along.
So while he's looking that up, I got a question that's way outside the box. And I'm just throwing this out there, and I don't know this being a municipal owned. I know that when I was a teenager, the Ballahoolies had a contract to cut hay between the runway and the taxiway. And I know that because about once a month they'd cut up the runway lights with the discs or whatever. But, and this probably is a question for you, and I don't even know if Charlie would know this, but what if we had an outside entity like Rainier or Georgia Pacific? How would it work if we can't come up with the money? Could we lease our land to them? Again, I'm just throwing this out there to see if it sticks, and get a percentage of this and fulfill our obligation. Would the state or would the forestry still fund them, then being a private entity, or would that just blow everything out of the water?
Well, I can tell
Or do you
you
even
that
know?
the chances of a timber company leasing the land are
They
practically
own all their
zero.
land, I
They've
guess.
got all the land they want, they have, and lease agreements, there's not too
Okay.
many of them now. Most of them are expiring.
Okay, so the
Yeah.
next thing is, but again, you're asking somebody to wait a long time on a return on investment. And I don't think you could allow a private logging company to do it, because then you wouldn't have the process of bid on the timber. They would have their foot in the door because they funded it, and we'd get a percentage off of it, but that probably would be illegal under Florida statute.
I think
In other
that,
words, we bid, you know what I'm saying? If we, I hate to use this term, but if we got in bed with some logging company that says, we'll pay the money for your seeding, we'll do this, we'll sit on the investment for the 15 years or 20 years it takes to get the return, then we can't go out for bids because we've already done the handshake with this logger. And that
it's
would
gonna
probably be
further
illegal.
complicate things, it really
Yeah.
is. Here's
I'm just
the,
thinking of ways to get the money
yeah,
to
so,
do it.
so here's what I was thinking was, so for 2025, all I'm asking for is $35,000.
Oh,
It's
that's
just-
all right, check.
That's it, $35,000, but $35,000 with every effort to try and get cost share on that. So getting the cost share on that would help alleviate it. I am new to all of this and trying to do, I know at one point there was a talk about a timber sale or whatever, but I think that needs to wait until we start putting some of this back in production. But I don't see why we couldn't plan one though, maybe for 26, the fiscal 26, which would start on October 1st, sometime they would plan a timber sale, and let some of those proceeds fund the stuff that follows after.
Some seed money or something.
And maybe, and you know, sort of reimburse for whatever we're out of pocket, and utilize what are the accounts that you said that there were, Craig?
Contingency.
We had
The
something
contingency
for
fund.
for holding the money or whatever for the,
We do have a
Yeah.
contingency fund,
Contingency
yeah.
fund.
And I was gonna talk about that a little bit,
yeah.
I guess, later.
Because that's what I'd like to see happen, so if we can at least get started on getting some of this in production. And the reason why, at first I was like, oh, we don't need to do anything, but it turns out that like a third of the land has plantations over 28 years old, which is really old. I mean, I was surprised, you know, so we basically have 0, we've got like a little bit in the 18, 19, and then we've got all this stuff that's 28 and older. So I really feel like that we would do better to get some of that out and start staggering some of this and get some different ages.
So you can get harvest kind of in
Yeah,
some of
get something more sustainable going.
Right.
I mean, not that you want to have something every year, but I don't think you want huge gaps.
Every
Just
3
in
to
an
5 or
order.
something, yeah.
I mean, it's not like we're a timber company. I mean, we're not, but
So what about from Airport Road going back?
would that be on here?
Yeah, well, it's above the blue.
You talking about here, above the blue?
So,
This?
the blue down here.
Oh,
down
right
the
here.
corner.
Yeah, the airport road
So,
coming in.
Okay, but along 100 to the new entrance road, we know we want that to be
In
marketable
other words,
Yeah, this inside
well,
here.
right
Yeah.
in here mainly.
For commercial.
for commercial development. Back to, literally back to and beyond probably where the interconnect road will be.
The 500 foot,
Pardon me?
the 500 foot.
Off the highway. or
Yeah,
whatever.
well, the gate's gonna be back that far, but but just before that, you would have the interconnect road. But I would say just a little ways, maybe 100 foot beyond
Talking
that.
about this one right here?
Yeah, that interconnect road, and all of that hatched area in
Right.
yellow, that's, of course, where the EA was done, and it's ready for development and marketing. And there's some things in place that we're dealing with Northeast Florida Economic Development Corporation about with some companies, and so I guess one of the things also that Clay County is doing, the Clay County Economic Development, they're getting grants to go out and actually get 100 acres. In fact, they're doing 100 acres for us here at the airport for a development. You know, get it ready so it's shovel ready. EA's done, everything else is done. Boom. So they can take that to other companies. Say, hey, I've got this 100-acre parcel here. Blah blah blah. Could we or should we incorporate some of that area on the 100 side of the interconnect road? I know there's some pine in there. I know it's not very large. Hasn't been there too long. I don't even know if it's marketable.
Yeah,
To
I
a
don't know. I
degree.
haven't looked at that since it's outside of the management thing.
Well, the
Of course,
other
that wouldn't fall under, and I just realized that wouldn't fall under the fire mitigation as much because that's treated. It's timbered and it's pretty well. Probably needs mowing. Probably needs some cleaning in between the rows. But so if we're looking. So back to your timeline, you said October of 24. So that's
Yeah, so
this
this
budget.
October,
That would start in this coming
The
budget,
new budget,
our fiscal year. We probably have enough money in the contingency fund that would cover that $35,251. So I think that's something that's doable. Although I think maybe Mr. Coombe, if he wants to chime in too, because we're continuing to try to not negotiate, but have conversations with ESG and MHD Rockland to get an idea about how much they're going to be flying, because that's a huge part of our fuel income is fuel sales to them.
overall income.
Well, yeah, we got a few other, turboprops that fly out of here, but nothing to that level. So, again, none of us have that crystal ball, so we put some numbers out there based on the conversations we've had with them. Hopefully that doesn't go south, and they don't fly as much. Hopefully they fly more, which helps us. So I like the plan. I think it's something that we needed to have in place for a long time. And to now that we have the plan, we got to just pull the trigger, make a decision if we're going to do it. I think, and I'm not. My next statement isn't to degrade this at all. I think the thing we have to be very cognizant of is that we're an airport, and millions of dollars come in from FAA and FDOT because we're an airport. We're unique. We're blessed. I mean, we've got a lot of civiculture area. So I think as good stewards, we got to maintain that as well. So it's a balance. I'm just saying we all need to realize it's a balance because we're an airport first, but then we do have these other properties, and we need to be looking at how are we going to create an economic corridor, literally, out here for this whole area.
Yeah, I kind of felt like that was the reasoning behind, the sort of the blocking out of all of that, because I was assuming that was your development area that was the primary focus right now, is what's outside of what was part of the forest plan. I mean, would that be an accurate statement?
It's actually a little too far out. I mean, other than it does incorporate the firm, there's a diagram in our master plan that shows for future developments. And I don't know if you have a copy of that, a digital copy of that.
Yeah, I had one, and I that's basically how I made that drawing, was based on the lines that were on that.
That's the airfield, basically there.
Yeah. Not on there.
Before we get off this subject,
Yes.
too, something I'm going to need done. This RPZ runway protection zone. So we did it down here on 11. You can't see it, but we had them come in. We had some loggers come in and cut this out. Yeah, back on the approach to 11, because we had trees that were getting into the glide slope safety zone. I want to do the same thing down here, but this is mainly oak. I don't think, Rex, have you been in there? This is, where the firm road goes around. Isn't that mainly oaks in there?
Yes.
So we just
And-
need that
and
shit.
garbage.
I guess that's what the biomass we use. But if you can, we got our inspection coming up in September, and I know there's 1 or 2 trees down there. So when a previous employee was here, what he was doing is he was just cherry picking. The guy would tell him, okay, that one and that one this year. And then next year it'd be that one, and that one this year. And I said, why are we doing this? Let's go ahead and do a clear cut, and then we don't have to worry about it for 15 years. So if you can keep that in mind, unfortunately I can't talk to you outside of the thing, but if you get to the point where you can ride down here and look, I'll tell Craig. He can get Rob to go down there and show you where I'm talking about. But I'd like to get that cut out.
And along that same line, Terry, on the orange section,
Yes.
and I know it would take a while, but we have RPZs that come off of 1129 back toward that area. It may be far enough away. I don't know what a 100-foot tree would look like.
It's getting there because it wasn't kept mowed, and all those saplings are coming up on the approach 29. It's going to be the next target area.
Well, that was another thing too. If that would have to be later in her proposal for 26, but we do need to keep in mind that whatever we put in an orange area, that when we're coming off that runway, we don't want to put anything there that's going to become an obstacle.
Yeah, I was wondering, because I was thinking that the way that it had drawn with the flares and everything, so it's the same problem right here?
Yeah, see those dotted
Here?
lines?
Okay, that's the first time I've seen that.
Yeah, that's the RPZ, runway protection zones.
Well, actually, the small triangle, or that's not a triangle, but what do you call that?
Trapezoid.
Trapezoid. This is the actual RPZ,
Right.
and we keep coming back, that's Florida gas or whatever. This right here, I don't know if that was proposed on the runway extension, is that right, David?
Yes, that extended as part of the runway extension.
So if this runway were to get extended 500 feet, that would then become into play, but currently this is the one, but where we're talking about here, your orange area is over here, and what he's talking about, if you get trees that are growing,
Yeah, because this is
60
definitely in
feet.
the orange area right here.
we would have to maybe do a little setback and try to do an estimate. Now, that doesn't mean, because these things will take, what, 20 years to reach the 60 foot, even with slash pines or whatever?
Yeah, I'd say.
So we might do a harvest on them 10 years or 12 years after they're planted?
Yeah, it's just, I think it's information that
Just
we
so
need to be
you're
aware of.
Yeah, I did not see that particular possible extension.
But like Scott was just saying, if they get to a point to where they're within the glide slope, we just have to cut them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and going in there and trying, we took a drone, got a guy to fly a drone, so he could come in a horizontal position and see the high ones, and then he hovered it, and then we went into the woods and tried to find the drone, and if you don't think that's like an egg hunt,
Yeah.
trying
All
to
right.
find that thing, so
All right,
anyway.
so where do we need to go from here? So your proposal is.
So I actually have two proposals. So the first proposal is something that can happen now. It has no cost involved in it, which is, does the board want to do the mitigation of the stand in blue that's down there at the entrance? Do we
I would
want them to
love
go
to
ahead
see
and do
that.
that?
Absolutely.
I'd like to see it open up where people can see our entrance.
Yeah,
Because
Now,
we're
what
at
does the
blind
mitigation
spot.
involve?
Well, they have different ways of doing it, but what I've spoke to them about was doing the chipping or the mulching. Have a mulch head, they just go between the trees, and then they're just taking down the
Right.
vegetation that's between them. They don't affect the pines.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh, so they don't
they're not
take the
gonna,
trees
no,
down.
they're not gonna take the trees.
Okay.
No,
And
no.
who's
Just
gonna
a
do
cleanup.
that?
Well,
Yeah.
that's still,
This is the
still
Florida
good.
Forest Service.
It was
Oh,
like
okay.
the machine that I was
What's that
talking
thing
y'all
that
about
swings the
that.
chains or
Yeah.
whatever? And- Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is their one sheet, like you said, that's probably similar to what you did for the fire, when
Right.
they did that burning. But basically, is that you're granting them access. But I can include this and email this to everybody if they want to look at it, just to see if there's anything that concerns them. But yeah, so I could give that to them at any point and just say, hey, when you have the time or whatever, we'd like to do that. Now, if there were other places what we wanted to do, say back in here, then we'd have to pay them if we do it like back in your zone back here where
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, if you wanted that taken down a little bit, just so there wasn't so much,
Do
just
we
so
need
much
to
so much
confirm all this 'cause
vegetation.
There's no cost.
Yeah.
Now this,
Yeah.
this part would be, that would be the no cost.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we want to just go ahead and vote on that and
I
be done
concur.
with that part, and then we can.
I don't see
It
why not.
needs it, for sure. I agree.
Does anybody want to
Do
make
we
a
need a
motion?
Let's do a motion on it.
Yeah.
I'll make
So
a
the
motion. Or you
proposal
make the
is,
motion.
what is the proposal?
So I make a motion, I guess I can do it. I'll make a motion that the 19 acres of pine at the entrance on the south side of the road, that we let the Florida Forest Service come in and mitigate that for the understory that's there. And just really, it's a fire hazard reduction is
Taking
what
out
it
the
is.
undergrowth.
What's that?
Taking out the undergrowth.
That's right.
That's correct.
I'll second it. All right, motion second. Any more discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion
Okay.
carries.
Okay, since that's out of the way, I was just going to say that if there is some desire to have it done on other areas that they can't do it for free, then they have a charge for that, and they gave me a schedule, and I can look at that if somewhere down the road we decide we might want to do some of our own, but then we'd have to pay for it.
I think, if I recall, when Carlton presented the plan to us, I think some of this area in the orange, was timber, planted timber in that area. That was one of the recommendations, to go in and do that type of underbrush clearing with a mulch or whatever. Because we had looked at the price of some machines actually, and then go out and look at what a contractor could do it for, or the Forest Service. So that's something that can be looked at later.
And I didn't spend a lot of time on that particular one because it was sort of in the future.
Right.
I was going to focus on this right here, but there may be a combination slightly different that we want to do with it. There may be places where we can mulch if it's not too not too heavy in things, or because it's set out for so long. Again, the cheapest thing you can do is the herbicide.
Yeah.
And then nothing cheaper than fire either. Fire is very effective. So that's sort of what I was thinking along the lines of try and keep it, low cost as much as possible, as long as it does just as good a job. But I would also bring people in to kind of give me a little bit of help, consult on it, hey, what's the best way to do it? Because we do want to do it so that we have a decent stand. I mean, I think there's benefit to that.
So can you get a quote on that orange area?
Yes, I could. I need to spend some more time out there to be sure, but what I wanted to do was just kind of propose, because I knew y'all probably weren't familiar with the cost of doing some of this stuff, and I just kind of wanted to throw that out there so y'all could see it and kind of get an idea of what we're talking about.
And I think in the plan, it's out, it's not long-term out, but it's beyond a couple of years, so.
Well, depending upon if we do, because the red and the orange is the whole 327. Okay, so I'm proposing to spray both of those.
Okay.
That would be the whole
Well,
thing.
then we won't have that issue.
Okay, so
No.
there is no quote needed then.
So that would be, well, I know what it would be to do
you've got
that.
your prices there.
So if we have the money, if we've got the 35,000 whatever out there to do the spraying, if it turns out to be not enough, that's what I guess I'm coming to you to say, hey, can we build in a little bit to, if unforeseen, something else needs to be done. Because I don't know how y'all typically do the budgeting. That's called padding the budget. but this was just your basic. This is all I do, and boom. So
Well,
there's
there's
no
also,
extra that I included in there.
There's also, without getting into great depth, and you've already heard a little bit of it, but we do have a negotiation that will be hopefully moving along with a tenant here that hopefully will yield more income for the airport, and possibly if you get it sprayed and burned down, maybe next year our finances will be better. So
Yeah.
I don't think anybody disagrees. It's a great idea to do all this.
And I was going to say, I don't see, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of objection here, but I will say this, just in my time with this board, in the previous year, there was a lot of talk about the timber management position and all, and we have somebody that now has the experience, and has an eye for, the needs and all. And again, this is something it's a sustainable resource that could benefit us in the long run. I mean, obviously, there's a certain percentage that needs to go to maintain and make sure that stays up, but then we can also have some that comes off of that, as well as being good stewards to the land. And also, I do see a lot of benefits here. And again, I'm not saying there's any objection, but it's nice to have the professional, viewpoint, and be able to offer this, because I think it may be slow at the beginning, but in the long term, it may be something that could benefit us, tremendously as far as having that, sustainable resource.
Well, and the evidence is there. We've been taking, and then we've been taking, and then we've been taking, and we're not putting anything back in.
Right.
It's time we paid the piper,
Right.
or at least start planning on it somehow.
Yeah.
Can we plant Christmas trees?
Oh, I don't know anything about Christmas trees.
Sell them every year.
Do we need to make that a motion?
So again,
We just did a vote.
this is the orange and the
The
red.
free
This is
part.
the stuff for the 25 budget. Is
The 35,000.
the 35,000, yes, and that's the number that I wanted to put out there. Is that's like the basic. I mean, I don't know if we could include another 5,000 in case there's other things that need to be done that we didn't count on. If there's maybe some plowing we wanted to do. Because I guess I'm assuming that you haven't had the lines plowed like between us and Blanding in a while, or.
Well,
Are there parts
Blanding-
that can be
The reason we hadn't, only because Blanding always plows theirs.
on their side?
Yeah. And so that was always considered enough fire break between
Okay.
us and them. My concern was between Camp Montgomery and then
Right.
anything to the north of us. To my knowledge, there may be some old fire breaks that were plowed in there years ago.
We haven't done
That's
it
why I
all,
was just
but-
curious is that something that needs to be looked at as well?
Well, the nice thing about this is that when we go to burn these, there will be fire lines. So that's part of it, is that they will plow fire lines around each one of these areas. So 'cause we've got to secure it before we can burn it.
Right.
So we will end up with them along these, wherever we're doing the burning, then we would have fire lines plowed all along these edges. And, I mean, the whole thing would be outlined. And that's the other contingency is I was just estimating hours. I have no idea. You have to pay by the hour for the work that they actually do. I don't know how long it would actually take them to plow it out, and I needed to talk to them some more about, are you talking about the time that it's sitting out there or the time that it's actually running and all that? Because I had only figured in like about, and this is probably crazy, but 6 hours was all I really thought about for the actual burning and running the equipment, but it would probably take more than that because you're going to have several parcels that you have to burn at different times. And that's what I'm talking about, that there's probably a little bit more cost in there, and that cost is, when you're actually running the equipment, is $108
Do they
an
charge
hour.
for mobilization?
What's that?
Do they charge for mobilization?
No, they do not. No. In fact, I've got their rate schedule here that they sent to me, and it says $108 an hour for a Type 2 dozer with plow. So, I mean, it could take 25 hours. I don't know. But that's only, I mean, that's what, another $2,500 is, if I did my math right. Yeah.
Well,
know-
and looking at your two scenarios
Mhm.
here, to me, it just seemed like scenario 2 would be a bit more palatable to the budget.
It could be, but then you're separating out. Plus, you've got the problem too of if there's going to be, you're taking 327 acres that you could chemically treat all at one time, and then you're going to have them come all the way just for 100-something acres. Sometimes they have a penalty involved in that, and I don't know what that would be. I would have to ask them because they're coming for a
250 is the
smaller
magic number,
acreage.
yeah.
Well, no, the 250 doesn't have anything to do with that
it
part.
doesn't?
No. This would be a private company that does herbicide work.
Oh, okay.
Aerial
Okay.
spraying?
Yeah, aerial spraying.
The
So
250 is the cost share.
that's the cost share, yeah.
Okay, I got you.
So it all depends upon if they have other stuff in the area. It's kind of a gamble, but that's the nice thing is if you could treat it all at once, that's, like I said, I'm a forester,
Oh, yeah,
so I kind
that
of
would
lean
take nothing to
toward.
do it all at once.
Yeah.
Aerial spraying, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't take them long to do that. And that's kind of what, I was just leaning toward trying to get it all treated. But when you come down to this summer and trying to burn it, that cost of having the Florida Forest Service,
Yeah.
plow it out,
So are we
and
going to
burn.
look at getting quotes on aerial spraying everything?
I have a quote, and thank you for bringing that up, because my other question is, what are we obligated to do? I mean, I don't know of a lot of people that do aerial chemical spraying, like for forestry. I know one group that I'm very familiar with that I have a quote from them, and that's what this is based on. And I'm just wondering, as a government entity, are we required? What are we required to do for contracts? Do I have to go get quotes from other people? Can I say this is a specialized
Typically,
thing?
if it's over a certain amount, we usually just try to get 3 quotes, right?
If it's over $10,000.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to get 3 quotes.
Well, there's another option in there too.
Yeah.
So if you cannot
So the quote we
find
have right now
other
is how much?
people, then it can be sole
The
source.
quote for the just the herbicide cypher is about $27,000 for the first scenario. So 27,000. But it's a very specialized thing, and there's every year you have fewer and fewer contractors out there.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. If you can't if you find one in Orlando that does it, and the next closest one is Dallas, and then California, you can get their quotes. But you know who's going to come in. If you can't find anybody, you just do sole source. I mean, it comes down to
Yeah,
that.
but I think there's more that are closer than Dallas.
Well, I'm throwing numbers out there now.
Yeah.
There's a difference between some guy spraying corn over in Hastings and somebody doing forestry, I would imagine, to a degree. I have seen, we had an air tractor that was coming
They
in
spray
here
it
like
all.
about 6 or 8 years ago, and he had that GPS on the airplane. That was amazing. That guy would take off, he'd go over there and do his runs back and forth
Right.
right on target. But spraying trees, like I say, I mean, I know it's similar, but
I think I can
Yeah.
get two, because we've got one in Georgia, something that they kind of tend to do the Georgia stuff.
Right.
So I know I could probably get two. So, and then I can check a little bit further and see. That's what I was wondering. I'm not familiar with what the obligation we have to, you know,
Yeah.
get quotes and go enter into contracts and stuff. So,
just make sure that you have your, Charlie can tell you, like on your RFQ or RFP, that they're meeting the same specifications, you know.
in other words,
That way-
basically bid it out with the same specs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
they have to meet
specs-
the same
Specs
specs.
have to be met.
Right.
I mean, if I'm not correct.
No,
know.
you would need to write
It's
up
gotta
an
be apples to
RFP
apples.
and say exactly what you want to do on how many acres, or put in the lat longs or
Right.
perimeter, put it out there to the world and get three quotes.
So everybody,
And if you don't
everybody
get three
quotes the exact
quotes,
same thing.
you don't get one or two, you come back and you just vote to bypass your own
Now,
financial policy.
Is there anything about posting that you're doing a contract? I mean, like, I don't know, like the public,
what do
you
you
have
ask?
to make the
Craig-
public
Craig will do
aware
that
of
for you.
anything?
He's gotta put it-
Or
he's
is
gotta
that
have-
just our business?
No,
That's
no.
what I don't understand too.
Craig knows how to do all that. You gotta put it in at least one newspaper, I think.
That's what I was asking
And then
about.
he may put it on our website, and then if he knows some other method or whatever, or Charlie may be able to help him, but he'll know how to do all that. All you
Okay.
gotta do is
Yeah.
come up with your
Specifications.
credentials and specifications for what you want done.
Mm-hmm.
And you may also build into that, let's say, this probably just takes a matter of hours, but you may have to put in stipulations about rain out days, you know, because they've got equipment sitting here on the ground, and if it's raining, I'm sure you can't put the herbicide on.
Well, they come,
Yeah, but it'll
they
take-
decide the day they're
It'll
doing it
take them
usually.
half a day or less to aerial spray it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't take
Now,
them
the
long.
other option is I can get Nick down there with his aerobatic plane, and we can strap Joni, the hot dog lady, on there with the weed sprayer. Joni would do it though to fly. She loves flying.
I think you're right.
I don't know how good the application will be, if it'll be on target, but
I think you're right, Scott.
Well, I would say because of the not knowing about the plowing, the cost of the plowing, probably put an extra 5 in there and maybe just look at like 40,000 even, and I think we would be okay then to cover. That's not going to be a definite, but it would be in there.
I was, when they burned Camp Montgomery,
Uh-huh.
I helped them do that.
Oh, nice.
And I don't know how many acres they actually did, but it was a 1.5 day, because the other half day was out here burning this. And it does not take them long.
It does not take long. No,
With
if you have
that-
the right
with that
conditions.
tractor,
they're good.
buddy, they
The time is going to be them actually putting that disc in the ground and pulling it around each one of the areas, and you just don't know as they're moving from one place to the other. It just takes time.
yeah.
I think I've got,
Have
pretty
you talked to
decent.
Mr. Jackson?
yeah, I've talked to Greg.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And Austin, who's the FAS out at New
Yeah.
River. Yeah,
Greg-
they were the ones that met me out here about the mitigation.
Where's
And
our ice cream truck out front?
he really is.
People leave it on me.
He was. I mean, he was doing it.
Yeah, so they can move along pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And like I said, I just had to do an estimate. And so, Bobby, what I was saying was maybe add like 5,000 in there just in case there's a problem with, that you need to do more plowing. It takes longer than we thought. But so I guess when it all comes down to it, my recommendation would be 40,000 for the 2025 budget.
And so that's what you want to propose.
That's what I would like to propose that we do for this coming year. So for the 320 acres, what I was saying, David, was I'd like to make it an even 40,000 to cover the chances that the plowing might take longer than what I thought. And so my proposal would be that we do the whole 327 acres, and with the stipulation that I try and find any cost share program, and that we can apply for, that we agree to apply for, and try and offset some of that cost.
Yeah. How soon would you know about something like that?
The cost share? I don't know. The August 8th is, the end of August is when they require that you have it. And so I'm assuming that maybe they'll have it by the 1st of October.
And you may not know this, but is it like a lottery? They only have so many to give out?
No, I think it's more like they have so much dollars.
Okay.
So they have a certain amount of dollars, and once that money's gone, it's gone. So apply early. So that's the only thing I can think about it. And I think they just opened it up too.
I hate to take a vote on this tonight without knowing if we could, well, you're working on the budget. Do you know if we've got 40,000? Do you and Craig know if we've got that kind of money?
Well,
This would be for
That's-
2025, the new budget.
Starting October 1.
Right,
Starting
that's
on-
this year that you've just
But
worked.
that's the budget we're looking at.
That's the one we're
Well,
looking
Well,
at.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Do we have 40,000 in there?
No,
'Cause y'all
not
already-
really.
So that's what I'm saying.
But here's the thing, if I can explain.
Okay.
I was gonna get into this later, but we're kind of getting into it now, so I need to kind of jump across a little bit. But in the 2024, 2025 budget, we had put in a contingency fund. And that was for, even this year, we've already seen unforeseen things. It's like, how are we gonna pay for that? And we can't just pay for things out of the budget that aren't really there without doing a budget amendment, which I was told by our CPA that that's quite actually a process that then affects our auditing, and if there's an issue there, that's a problem. So we put that contingency fund in there for things that were unforeseen, and I feel like, we have the reserves in our bank accounts that we could just pay for this and do it. We would have to submit a negative budget, I think, is how that would have to work, because the funds would then have to come out of reserves. But I feel like and I want to do this, I think it's very important, but I feel like we're blowing up the contingency fund before we even get to October 1.
So what we could do is then, because in our budget, we do have a line item expense for timber management.
Yes.
So we would use,
And you could put that in there, right?
right. So, if you add it to the budget, and you can,
Yeah.
like you say, I don't remember what the number was in the contingency.
It was like 45,
45,000,
Yeah.
so.
give or take.
So from that standpoint, like Craig's saying, we could pay for it, and then it would show up in our P&L under the timber management expense.
Correct.
But then what if something else comes up, like legal fees and we
Well-
don't have that contingency money?
Well, we've upped those numbers as well in the budget, because historically of what we've seen and with the firm or whatever, but we've added some more money in there to cover that. We know with the auditing that we're gonna have another single audit
Okay,
as well, because of projects that are coming up, so we've increased that amount
right.
to include that. So, we've covered all those. It's just these other things, well, like insurance, for example, this year. Man, we got nailed with a big insurance bill.
Yeah.
So, but we've included that in this year's budget as part of the increase, and you guys have seen it. Y'all seen the numbers. So, I think we're covered. It's just something that may happen that we don't even have a clue, and that's why we were trying to put some money in that contingency fund for just what Craig described to us. So I think it's doable. It's we can do it.
But it doesn't leave you any buffer.
Well, it
Very little
would,
buffer.
again, the funds for her project would have to come out of reserves. You're gonna submit a budget that it's got a line item, like David said, for whatever the amount is. And wherever that money comes from is not really that important.
I guess what I'm asking, maybe I'm getting too confused. What'd you say, 45,000?
There's about 45,000 in our contingency fund.
Okay, so if we take that money and shift it over to forestry, what do we have to fall back on? 0?
That's my point, is that you have to leave the contingency fund at 45.
Yeah,
You
that's
put-
what worries me.
So we're not spending this 40,000. If we were to accrue the 40,000, we're not spending that out of any line item budget that we have here.
Right.
But when you look at our overall accounts that we have the money there to spend for this. But it would show up, the expense would show up in our P&L as a timber management expense.
But once you spend that 40, and if we get the cost sharing, it'll be less than that. Do you have any buffer left behind? Is there still
Yes.
monies?
Oh,
Okay,
yes.
okay,
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
eventually it will start building, right? I mean, as
I think
time goes
that's-
by.
Exactly, and I think
Right.
that's the thing, is we kind of have to kickstart this,
Right.
because we can't cut to finance,
Okay.
or can we?
Well, I think probably next year, with getting this going and everything, I think next year, I don't see why we couldn't.
But would the
Harvest
cut
something.
right, would the harvest next fall cover this expense? And,
Probably not, because the time frame of doing the contract and everything usually carries over into another year. So
another fiscal year.
yeah, another fiscal year. Yeah, so
Well,
this
but
would
even
sort
then-
of be the beginning, and
Yeah,
then
I get that.
it
But
kind of
even-
trail it.
Even let's say we just, and I might not be doing a very good job of explaining it, but the money's in your bank, right? That's where it's, even though it's in our budget, you take that out of your mind. That's where the money's gonna come from, out of our bank account. My question just was, no matter what the fiscal year is, when you do the harvest next fall, would we be able to replace that back in the bank account and still be able to?
Yeah, I would think that you could do that, and then my preference would be to utilize whatever else is left over from the
Yeah.
timber sale to try and continue with the next.
I think for
Yes.
the first couple of years, it's not really gonna be a profitable thing until you get.
Right, you're going to have to have
established, is that right?
you're going to have to kind of have it both. Yeah, the timber sales following the the
So
planting and
I'm
everything.
just trying to clarify, I'm not making any statements.
I think that, like I say, we get the thing kickstarted, we get it moving, and then we can start harvesting some others. It may not completely reimburse for our expense, but still, that we've got something moving now to where there's a plan and there is
I
some money
agree.
coming back.
I agree.
So that we don't have to spend as much the next year, and then the next year, because we're harvesting more with the plans.
And hopefully we've got this cost share thing figured out. So
Right.
that would be nice. Yeah, I've got to find who's the right person to kind of answer those questions that you've brought up about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know that, Jim Taylor's gonna have any issue. We've had a discussion with Bill Prang. I've raised some issues there about, we have to be careful sometimes with some FDOT funding, like for our appropriations for the road work. And there is a possibility when DOT looks at all their monies and who gets what, and now, we've applied for appropriations for $3.5 million, then they're gonna say, well, wait a minute then, so all of this aviation money that we've got grants already lined up for the next 5 years could potentially be taken away to pay for this, the appropriations part. Because remember, FDOT, it's one pot and with transportation of all sorts and some designated, just for aviation spaceport. So we don't think that's a concern. Bill didn't think that was a concern. The issue with the FAA, whether they had to wave their hands over it, that doesn't appear to be an issue either. So I think the only questions is those that I've listed there about some of the financial responsibilities, interest penalties, just some other things in there, just give you some clarification.
Sure.
And Jim may be able to do that, so,
Okay.
all right? So,
Yeah.
all right, well, thank you,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Coon. That certainly helps us with understanding where we are. All right, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to make a motion that we include $40,000 in the budget to be able to do the 327 acres and chemically site prepare them and burn it next year in preparation for planting it in fiscal 26.
Okay,
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion or questions?
Was that you, Bobby?
Motion by Ms. Terry and second by Mr. Seamer. All right, no other questions, discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, very good. All right, let's see here. Craig,
Yes, sir.
knock out your stuff here.
So a couple of things just before I get started on my list. I wanted to let everybody know that Lori, well, two things. We had to separate employment with Justin due to some legal issues. Lori, who's been our fiscal clerk for 2.5 years, she is helping train someone else. She will be leaving here soon. So Mary Sulfridge is her name, is the new fiscal clerk, and she is the wife of Mark Sulfridge, who is one of the head mechanics over at Rockland. So she's been here probably a couple weeks now. I think she's going to work out great. And she's got a lot of rapport with people in town. I think she is heavily involved in the AMVETS downtown, so she's very well known and liked. So I just wanted to explain tonight, it's a trial run. I'm sitting off to the side against David's wishes. I'm not part of the board. I'm an airport manager. I'm still here to answer questions, present my information or whatever. Sometimes probably not sometimes, might be more often than I think, but I'm just opinionated where I'm going to put in my 2 cents, and that's really not my position in a board meeting for the most part. So I've already kind of caught myself a couple times, but it's just a trial run to see how everyone feels about. There's Charlie, he's going to go over there now. So, but anyways, that's all I had on that. So for the DOT grants. We had 3, and there will be more to come later this fiscal year. One that's going to be a big one is the kickoff to rehabilitate runway 1129. That's a DOT grant, and it's like $4.3 million, but that will be over a 3-year span. It's not going to be all in 1 year. It takes a while to do a runway rehabilitation. So we're just going to do these for now, and I think the most important one that I wanted to get going as soon as possible was for the fuel truck. So that one's finally written, ready to be executed tonight. $300,000 for a fuel truck. The second one, and I don't know if you can do one motion or if you have to do them all separately, Scott, David.
Separately.
Yeah, let's do them separately.
Do you want to go ahead and do the fuel truck then? If anyone doesn't have any questions.
Does it have a resolution number or anything?
Yes, sir.
Let me read, first of all, because I know this is what they do at the city.
Oh, okay.
So we'll just read by title. It's a resolution accepting a public transportation grant agreement from Florida Department of Transportation authorizing execution by the appropriate officials on behalf of the Keystone Heights Airport Authority. The purchase of a new fuel truck at Keystone Heights Airport. The municipality is eligible for and has requested a Rural Economic Development Initiative Ready waiver pursuant to Florida Statute 288.0656. And the FP number for this is 445-983-1-904-01. This is a 100% funded project by the DOT.
So that FP number, I'm making a motion that we vote in favor of resolution 2024-07, resolution accepting $300,000 for a jet truck, new jet truck, FP.
Jet A fuel truck.
Jet A fuel truck.
Yeah.
I want a jet truck.
We're not running a truck. Yeah.
Oh, actually, that'd be a good
I need to be
idea.
able to fuel these airplanes fast.
Quickly, that's right.
That would be FP number 445-983-1-94-01.
Now second.
All right, we have a motion. Here, a second.
Second.
Second? Any questions on the resolution? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next one.
Yes, sir. And this is -8, Scott.
Okay.
-8 is for the 3 backup generators. Now, we already did this about 6 months ago, but only half the DOT funding was available at that time. This is the second half of funding to be a total of $400,000, but Bill said you had to do a new resolution with some updated verbiage, that this is an amended resolution. So they're gonna, the DOT as, Keystone Heights being the backup emergency operations for the governor. Obviously, and that's another thing too, just as a side note, is I think some consideration does happen from the DOT to invest more probably in Keystone than they might another airport, because we are a backup EOC. But this would provide generators for the FBO building. In this office, I've already spoken with the governor's detail. This will be their command center, so to speak. If there's a, yes, I know they do go to Camp Landing, but they said they needed to use this office for like a main post, or I forget the verbiage.
Real quick, when we
Yes,
had
sir.
the fires in
2007.
99, whatever it was,
2007 was the one that came across
Forestry
here.
was using our other, they set up all their
Yeah.
internet, and they were over there commanding the helicopters and all that, so it's multiple use, yes.
Yeah, so the terminal building here, the fuel farm, to make sure that's operational if no power exists, and then the
Runway
airfield light vault, which would run all the airport lights. And
And one thing, maybe Bill had said it and I forgot. What size generators are each?
I forget. He has a spec number though,
He's
and
He's
calculated them, and they're
specified each
overkill.
one. He's had their electrical folks do that at AECom, because each load is different. So each
Right, and I was
generator is
just
different.
wondering, because I'm actually looking at getting one for my house, because my mother being on oxygen and the power goes
that's
out,
important, yeah.
it's not a good thing.
I can get you that number, Rex, if you
This-
want.
No, I already got one.
Oh,
I had the guy come out today,
Oh, okay.
and that's why I was wondering what the KW was
Right.
It's
for
pretty
each
large.
one.
They're overkill here.
This, I questioned that,
Well, I use that
because
word.
it was 60 kW just for the fuel farm, and I said,
Wow.
But they have a calculated factor, so that they're not loading, I think he said more than 40% or 50% of the load.
50% should be.
So because I questioned it, when I saw the numbers, we were talking about it at first, I said, we don't need 60,000 watts over there, there's two motors, but they decided that's what we needed,
Well,
and they're paying for it.
The largest issue there, the fuel farm is a 3-phase.
Right.
All of the rest are single-phase units.
Yeah.
So that's a big factor.
But they're gonna be more than adequate.
I'll read that resolution.
Yes, sir.
verbiage. So,
And does that complete the thing, not like you were saying, it's two resolutions that,
This is the second half.
yeah, so that completes the whole, everything that you
Correct.
said we would have to have.
yeah. So this is resolution 2023 should be
2024
4-08.
Yes, sir.
Resolution accepting an amended public transportation grant from Florida Department of Transportation, authorizing execution by the appropriate officials on behalf of the Keystone Heights Airport Authority. Purchase and installation of 3 backup generators for the FBO building, fuel farm, and airfield vault. The municipality is eligible for and has requested a Rural Economic Initiative ready waiver pursuant to Florida Statute 288-0656. And the FP number is 445-908-2-904-25. And the amount is up to and including $400,000 related to eligible project costs.
Okay, I make a motion that we pass Resolution 2024-08 for the purchase of 3 backup generators. This will be Part 2, or the second phase, and this is under FP 445-982-2-94-25, not to exceed $400,000.
We have a motion by, well,
Just
Mr.
the
Fryer.
motion.
yeah, and second by Mr. Ludwig.
I'm Scott. and you're-
Yeah. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right?
So
And
the last one for tonight is the same thing. It's an amended second half of funding for the bulk fuel storage and related self-service components. So it's $950,000 total. They're going to, right now we only have a 10,000 gallon avgas tank, and the standard at airports is 12. I know the emails have kind of gone out before, we've run out of avgas. Well, that's because you have to have 9 or 10% of space at the top of the tank for expansion and contraction. So when the loads of fuel are 8,500 gallons, you can see that that puts us in a position where we have to be really down low. And if that happens on a Friday and the weather's nice, and you just, there's no, and this is not just here, it's at a lot or most GA airports, there's no way to know what your traffic is going to be like on any given day. Just all of a sudden everyone decides they're going to go to Keystone and get some gas. So bringing this up to 12,000 would eliminate that issue. And we're going to get a new self-service fuel cabinet where the guys actually pull the hose out to pump their fuel. That's an older, I don't know. I think they were put in, that cabinet was put in the same time that the Fuel Master was put in that we've replaced, and that was 2001. So that equipment up there is 23 years old or whatever. So it's definitely past its useful life for sure. But yeah, I don't think there's any other. It's a self-service cabinet. It's the tank. I don't think there's any other
Retention walls or retention containment, all that stuff.
Well, that I'm definitely not sure on. But as far as like the actual components of the fuel system, I don't think there's anything beyond that.
So this doesn't include anything with the jet storage tank?
Well, so initially, that's a good question. Initially, Maria wanted to add a second 12,000 gallon jet tank.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I think our more important issue, and I'm not saying she was wrong for making that decision in any way. I'm just saying that I think the 10,000 gallon avgas tank is a bigger issue for us.
Yeah, yeah.
When we call to get jet fuel, it's
So
usually
just-
here the next day.
Right. So just for clarification,
Mhm.
this grant, this particular grant, is really for upsizing the avgas storage tank.
Correct.
The fuel dispensing station.
Yes.
So I was just curious if it did anything to the
Oh,
jet
actually, that's a
storage
good. No, that I'm glad you brought that up. It does include one thing that was set aside this year in the budget that we ended up not needing was relining of the tank.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So that is included in this
Oh,
as
very
well.
good, very
That we didn't have to pay for that. That's will be 100%.
Yeah.
If I can add to that, so originally, when Bill Prank came to us, this money was for the jet fuel, because that's the way it's set up.
Mm-hmm.
But not only do you have 12,000 gallon capacity for jet fuel, which gives you a little buffer,
Mm-hmm.
you've also got a 2,200 gallon tanker, which has just been sold, I think,
Yep,
Yeah.
and you have a 5,000 gallon tanker. We have no avgas tender,
that's a good
so there's
point.
no buffer.
Yeah.
So we made the decision, we had discussions or whatever, and said it made more sense to get the avgas to give us a greater buffer.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, because it invariably happens on a weekend or a holiday weekend.
Right.
And then you can't get a truck here for 3 days and people are stuck.
Well, and if you order a short load, like let's say
It costs you more.
$6,000,
Plus
that's
you
right.
knock it down.
Yeah.
And we have to price it higher. You're
Right.
already, that's an
Yeah.
issue.
Okay, very good.
All right, so we have a resolution 2024-09, resolution accepting an amended public transportation grant agreement from Florida Department of Transportation authorizing execution by the appropriate officials on behalf of the Keystone Heights Airport Authority. Rehabilitation and expansion of the bulk fuel storage and related self-service components. The KHAA is eligible for and has requested a Rural Economic Development Initiative ready waiver pursuant to Florida Statute 288.0656. The FP number 445-982-1-94-25.
Okay, I make a motion that we pass resolution 2024-09 for the second phase funding for a bulk storage tank and related equipment, not to exceed $950,000. And that FP number is 445-982-1-94-25.
I'll second it.
A motion by Mr. Fryer and a second by Mr. Ludwig. Any discussion, questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right,
So the budget, before I get we get too far in the weeds or whatever, I just wanted to kind of preface it by saying that, this is my first year here, so I really needed David's help in terms of, he has a very thick folder of historical information, why we did things, and that's one thing that David's very good at is notes and having that available later for usage. So, the bylaws state that this is a function of the airport manager to write and maintain the budget to submit for board approval. So even though I was definitely involved with David, and we sat down for hours and hours and hours. We definitely did not just put blindfolds on and throw darts at the board or whatever, I mean, this is historical data using, I guess, our best guess as to what this next year looks like. One thing that I want to, and this is another concern of mine in terms of contingency fund. ESG is the not really sister company, but they're the ones that do the pilot training and fly the Rockland airplanes. If they don't have any business, the airplanes don't fly. If they don't have anyone to train like Germany or other NATO countries, we don't sell any fuel. They have not flown since April, even yet today. And I've talked to them and asked through an email, I said, what is your outlook for business? Because that would help us determine what our budget's going to look like. And he said that he thought they would be flying approximately 20 hours a month starting in August. So that's how we got to our jet fuel budget number. But I want you to understand that if the countries aren't signing contracts or they don't show up, we had to base this off something. So that's why I had the contingency fund in part as well, is that if we're falling short on jet fuel sales, that will help cover the difference, at least in part. But one of the things that, and I think we might need to have an educational, I don't know if it's just a meeting that I have with tenants or if it's a workshop officially, but I don't know that some people understand the ecosystem of an airport, and any GA airport is usually your primary income item is fuel. You can't price it to break even because you'll be in the hole immediately. And even with the fuel, even saying that with the fuel, the jet fuel is definitely, they're a lot thirstier and they're not as price sensitive on the margins and stuff. A 5-hour ESG training flight is about 4,000 gallons of jet fuel, one flight. Piston airplanes are buying anywhere between 8 to 20 gallons to maybe 100 if it's a twin engine.
Right.
So you can tell real quickly that the numbers just add up faster on the jet side. So I can't guarantee you the fuel numbers are going to wash out at the end of the year, but again, it's historical data. We checked in with ESG. I know Rockland is working on, I guess unmothballing is my best term for airplanes that have been sitting in the desert. They were in other countries. They sold them to Argentina. Rockland has a contract to get them up and running and ship them on their way. So I was just talking to the head of maintenance for Rockland today, and he said that I think it's in 2 weeks they're going to fly, well, I forget the number of hours, but he said probably 14,000 gallons of jet fuel. So that'll be a great boost for that week. But again,
is
it's
that for ESG or is that for Rockland?
well,
maintenance?
ESG will be doing the training. I guess that's a good point.
That's not a Rockland maintenance flight though for the.
No, it's a familiarization flight for Argentina.
Okay.
And ESG will be doing that. But again, that's a one-time. I think they're doing 4 aircraft, maybe 5. I forget the actual number, but Tina's over there probably knows all of that information, and she's just sitting there. But it's not an ongoing long-term thing, is my point. So we were lucky enough back in December, January, February to have the caravan from Canada here. We sold them a lot of fuel. That was way above our projected numbers because it was not something we had any idea that would ever come to fruition. So something like that may come again. Also, I've taken a lot of steps to talk to tenants, transient customers that buy jet fuel. If their base, home base sells it cheaper than us, I ask, well, what's your price? If it's something that we can do and we're still making a decent amount of money, I say, okay, I'll match it for you. And that's another way to help move some fuel.
Right, yeah.
So anyways, that's it on the fuel. The contingency fund, and that is there, David, under total buildings and grounds,
Okay.
if you have that pulled up. But I just, that was something, I forget how we came up with it. I don't know it was even necessarily my idea, but again, we've had some things come up just since I've been here that, how do we pay for that? We got to do a budget amendment. Oh, that entails a lot of stuff. I don't want to do that in terms of just auditing and all the accountability we have. So I did put that aside. And then one of the other things that I'm not making any statements, I'm just doing research, but I told David, I think the airport really needs to consider some kind of health or retirement or something, very minimal. I don't even know what it is. Maybe it's a health savings account. You just put so much in a month and that helps the employee go to the doctor or pay for their medicine or whatever that case may be. Rob doesn't necessarily need that because he's retired, full-blown, military and has TRICARE, and his wife works for University of Florida. But it's not even really about Rob. It would be who's after Rob. When you go to hire that position, you may be limited as to who your pool is because you don't offer anything.
Right.
So their spouse or whatever has to have a certain kind of job. But anyways, you see what I'm saying? I just think that might limit you a little bit. So I'll get back to the board if I have more info. Charlie's looking for me to see if we are a dependent district. Is it an option to even get on with them? In some places, the employee has to pay at least part of it to get good coverage. I just want to see all the options, bring that to the board, and say, can we even do anything? I'm not even saying we can't, but I think we should at least take a look. So, that's. Did anyone have any questions on other budget items?
Well, when you talk about the healthcare,
Yeah.
recruitment and retention are two hurdles for companies.
Yeah.
And employees, when they're looking, that's a big deal. I was fortunate where I worked at. We had what Obama called a Cadillac plan. I paid like a $10 copay. I had a $500 max out of pocket for the whole year.
Right.
And gosh, I wish I had that now.
Right.
Now that I'm retired, unfortunately, our company doesn't continue. Can't even stay in the group. But I will let you know, 5 years ago when I retired, when I first got my first Blue Cross policy, it was $650 a month. And that was with a $5,000 deductible, and now I'm paying $1,200 a month for a $9,000 deductible.
Wow. Well,
So
I know that I was
this is why employees look for that
Yeah.
first and foremost sometimes before they even look at their wage.
I agree, and I think the days of just you have full-blown health care, doesn't cost you a thing, I think those are gone. I don't know that exists right now.
I think you're seeing a lot of cost sharing.
And I
Yeah.
Well, so in essence, Scott, what really you were mentioning is healthcare is part of a person's wage.
It
really
is.
It's
Yeah.
part of
It
the
is.
benefit package.
I've actually been at a place before at the end of the year, they tell you what you make for your salary. They include your vacation, your health insurance, and then to the bottom it says, here's what we're really paying you every year to be here. So
Right.
I totally get all that. But
And I don't know, I don't know if there is an option that possibly the city, if there's something we can fall under, that falls under the city, possibly.
well,
we
we're a
can-
dependent district,
Yeah,
so
we
that's the
can-
thing that I was thinking, well, that sounds like maybe, and it actually might help Charlie on their side in terms of if you have more people,
Well, we're
it
looking,
might lower the rate.
Charlie's been helping us with looking, is there something through Florida League of Cities? Is there something underneath this municipal umbrella that we might be able to qualify for, even though we are a special dependent district?
And let me add real quick, I did talk to Tom Conley today. He said that they do health insurance with FMIT. They don't do small groups such as 2 to 5 people.
Yeah,
So you're gonna be, that's another roadblock that we're gonna,
that is a hurdle.
yep.
And I'm totally with Craig on that. I mean, and most of all of you here, you know, are already retired, so you're already living that life. I'm a couple years out from being retired from my current job, and I'm already looking at having to get another job just to pay for insurance, you know,
Yeah.
just so we have continuing insurance, because we're still young enough that we'll,
Yeah.
you know, we'll need to have that. So I 100% agree. And if there's something that we can do as a board to at least move in that direction, I'm definitely on
Yeah,
board with
and
that.
I was
you know.
on one of the plans for the, I call it Obamacare, that's not the official term, but what I found out after a while is it's really insurance against huge blowout things, because when you go to the doctor, you're almost paying the cash price anyways.
I think you're talking about it like a catastrophic policy.
Well, that's what mine is, if you think of it.
But they don't label it that way.
I can
They call it
pay
their
back.
gold plan.
Yeah.
But when you go to the doctor, it's like, well, you pay these $500 a month premiums, and
Yeah.
it doesn't really help a lot, to be honest with you.
Well, but if you have something, and that's what I gotta look at, is if I have something major, I can pay back 9,000. I cannot pay back 200,000.
Right.
You know, if I have a heart attack or I'm in the hospital and ICU, what's ICU nowadays?
Oh, I have no
$2,000,
idea.
$3,000 a minute.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Really?
Yeah.
And we live in the greatest nation on earth, and we still haven't
Sure.
solved this problem. But
Right.
I'm fortunate that I had a good income, and my retirement's good. But I think about that $1,200. I could probably pay half of a condo payment at the beach for that amount of money.
Right.
But I can't be without it.
No.
I
And
You
you
have to
need
have it.
And you know, it is. It's a recruitment enticement, and it's a retention enticement.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't have to be the whole kit and caboodle, or, you know, I hate to even really bring it up, but I figured someone was gonna ask about what the contingency fund even was, and that was just a thought that, you know, I went to David with and said that we need to really look at it, so.
Is there?
Well, in all fairness, Craig and I had this conversation about wanting to do something in that area for our employees, and we have been looking. Charlie, that number you threw out, I think, for the Blue Cross Blue Shield was just crazy.
10 grand a year for one person, essentially, is what.
Yeah,
City's
so
paying.
our group in the city, and I haven't drilled down on this yet, I did find our Blue Cross Blue Shield rep is through the Bailey Group. And I've got her name and number next to my phone, I just didn't get that far today.
Mhm.
To see if we can add one, but we've only got 3 of the 12 city employees that use the insurance. So it isn't a big group, so I don't want to get anybody's hopes up that there's an economy of scale here to be had.
Sure.
He would increase our group by 31%.
But here's another way I was thinking about it is if, let's say for instance, you just had a health savings account, very simple. I think you just deposit money in it. You can use it at the doctor or whatever, you know, medications. Let's say that's $500 a month, right? That was just a number I had in my head. If his policy, unless you use 12,000 for easy math, that's $1,000 a month. If the employee wanted to pay 500, you're still putting in the same 500 you would have been putting in and it's a much better situation. There's a lot of options. I don't want to get into it all tonight.
And we're looking, because we see that there's a need. I've always wanted us to do more for our employees, but quite frankly, we just couldn't afford it.
And I get that. And that's Rockland that's helped us in ESG
Right.
get to the point where we could probably even consider it. But again, we got the Florida State Guard that I know is not a lot of information's been pumped out yet, and that's because we really don't have. But I felt like the last time we met with them, they wanted to know how quickly they could sign a lease.
Yep.
That's how serious they are. So I think that's going to be a good thing. I just don't know about the time frame of doing a environmental assessment. I think I talked to Bill Prang today, and he said that he didn't think it would need a full-blown 18 or 24-month thing, but it wouldn't necessarily be the short little, they call it a category exclusion, where it only takes 3 months. It's like one piece of paper. It would be somewhere in the middle. He thought it would be about $100,000 to doing environmental. So I don't know the time frame for them to be here, but it definitely, I think within the next few years they'll be here.
And that will help us financially.
We need to diversify our revenue streams.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Have you checked with, what do we belong to, Northeast Florida Airports Council, or is it Florida Airports Council?
Florida Airports Council.
Have you gone to one of the meetings, or?
We're looking at all of those
Yeah.
entities to find out what's available. Like you just said, the critical issue is we have too few employees.
Yeah.
But what if, and I don't know, I mean, obviously Orlando Airport's not gonna worry about it because they're big enough, but what if the small rural airports in Florida came
Get together. Yeah.
I know where to do a
yeah.
group. I mean, just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See what we could do.
So
Anyways.
we're looking at all those
Yeah.
options.
So did anyone have any other questions about the budget?
No.
Why a number was what it was?
Well, let me ask you this. So you read the 2 letters from our tenants.
Mm-hmm.
Are we not voting on this yet? I mean, is this,
No, we're voting on it tonight.
okay, so I've been thinking long and hard about this so that everybody's understanding and there's transparency. I'm a tenant here as well as a board member.
And so is Mr. Deschanel.
He is also. Now, a couple of the tenants have approached me about this. They heard a 10% increase. It's just a number, okay? But when I think about things, I talked to an ex-employee of ours, or not ex, but a previous employee that has his airplane at Hurlong. And he was telling me what his hangar rent was, and I didn't feel so bad about what mine might be going to. His is a much older hangar. I think it was built, my gosh, in the 60s. Or 50s maybe. And he's paying a significant more. But I have a fiduciary responsibility to this board to help keep this airport viable. We all do.
Mm-hmm.
And while I don't like the idea of my rent going up that much, I have to think about the things for these people to understand, and I wish we were live tonight or online, but if we did not have the ready status, what do normal airports like us pay? 5%?
10. You paid 10.
Is it 10?
Yes, sir.
So the runway lighting project, my best recollection, was $678,000, meaning that this airport would have been paying $67,800 towards that. Talk about our rent going up.
Yep.
Same thing on the taxi lane project, which was 1.4 million. Now, with that said, a lot of airports are struggling, and you non-pilots don't know this, but if I fly up to Craig Airport and I land and I go to an FBO, a fixed base operation, which is what we are, and I pull up their ramp to let Rex out of my airplane, you either pay a $20 or $30 ramp fee, and I'm talking about I could not even shut down the engine and they're going to charge me, or I got to buy 20 gallons of gas. These are things we're not doing here.
Well, let me
And I
stop
know
you
that's a
there.
little bit different
Yeah, that won't work here.
because these are tenants. No, it
Yeah.
won't. It
Yeah.
won't. The other thing is, if you raise the price on avgas, we've got a tenant, he's still here, but I've seen him get in his airplane and fly to Palatka. I don't know how some people do the math, but he flew over there to save 9 cents a gallon
Yeah.
and fill up.
They'll spend 15 to save.
He'll,
7.5,
I mean,
yeah.
no, he was spending probably 25
It's the
cents
principle.
per minute. But I'm telling you, it's the mentality. If you overprice your gas, we get a lot, I see it because I'm out here mowing. We get a lot of transient airplanes coming and going here. And I can tell when the price is low because I see airplanes I don't recognize going to the fuel pump.
And I've made a great effort to try to lower that too.
Right.
There's 2 schools of thought in fuel pricing. One is you price it higher to use the equipment less, and at the end of the day you make the same margin you would as if you price it lower and you're using the equipment all the time. Now for us, since the DOT helps out a lot, that's not as big as it would be for an FBO, so I'd rather err on the side of the cheap fuel, drive the traffic, that may be some other incidental economic activity, guys taking crew cars to lunch, or I don't know, whatever, but I just think that's a better approach than keeping it
Well-
high. We're not a destination airport.
Right, and what I was talking about with the ramp fees was not to suggest that we do that. What I'm saying is we don't do it.
Yeah,
It's a
We-
benefit here, we don't do it.
we can't do. Yeah.
The other thing is, that I try to think about is the word frugal when you're kind of tight. Is
Yeah.
that the polite way of saying it? When you think about it, we got 2 full-time employees and we got 3 part-times. We're by no means overstaffed. What I'm saying, folks, is we're not wasting money.
Mhm.
Even what your project is not a waste of money.
No.
It's an investment in the future. And so, as much as I hate to see it go up, I think we have to do it. Now this is kind of frustrating, but when you get into and it was addressed in one of those comments, yes, Rockland provides jobs, they sign a long-term contract, but they get locked into a very nice minimal rate. On the flip side, us month-to-month tenants, because that's what we are, it's kind of being put on our shoulders, but I don't see any other choice around it.
Well, we'll get some help in terms of budget from the firm. I know.
Well, that's what
not-
I'm saying.
Not resolved yet, but
Yeah.
that will be resolved.
So, well, let me finish if I may.
Go ahead.
Because I'm getting old and I forget my train of thought. You know what I mean, Bill? So, but the other thing that a lot of people don't know from history, I think David's been on the board, what is it, 13 years?
09, whatever the math is, I'm like,
Okay.
I can't do math tonight either.
And I think I've been on here 11, but I know there was something that was going on that was hurting everybody financially, and we foregoed, if that's the proper. There was a couple of years here we did not raise the tenants at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of put us behind right there. So I do think an increase is necessary, but I'll say it with this caveat. I think 10% is a lot to bite off. And so what I would like to propose, because when we raised by 10% or whatever percentage we do, it's actually more than that. Because you've got to figure the state tax, is it 7.5% here?
On Clay, yeah.
So your multiplier, if you go up by 10%, and then you multiply that by 7.5 for the overall, it's actually even more than 10%. What I would like to see us do, and I'm proposing this if I need to put it in the form of motion.
But can I ask a question real quick?
Certainly.
Doesn't the FBO pay the 7.5%? Like I'm missing.
No, the
No, it's
does.
taxed on my invoice.
It is, it's on
Oh,
the
it
invoice.
is. I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so whatever right now, my
Wow.
rent on my hangar is $380,
It's
Gotcha.
taxed 7.5%.
and then
yeah.
7.5% on that.
Okay, I actually didn't know.
But you go to the store, you're paying that same 7.5%.
Right, but what I'm saying, when you raise it by 10%, you're not just raising 10%, you've got another multiplier in there, and I'm saying the bottom line to the tenant is a little bit greater. It's not much,
Yep.
but it might be 10.3% you're actually going up, or 10.4.
Which is not a lot. For people that own aircraft, pay insurance for aircraft, and fuel aircraft, and that's not a lot of money.
Well,
And I want to add something real quick before you go,
Yeah.
Scott. 3.4% was the CPIU in April 2024.
right,
There is absolutely no way inflation was only 3.4%.
no, again.
Things are way higher than that.
Go to the grocery store,
Yeah.
go buy anything.
It's double,
That,
yeah.
that was without fuel and food.
Yeah.
The CPIU, I think, is all of them, isn't it, combined?
It-
That's what I understood, but I could be wrong. I didn't look at it that deeply, but
Well, here's the bottom line, is we've looked, again, we're not just pulling numbers out of the air, we're looking at historical data. And you're right, there was an increase last year,
Right,
and,
but we were limited to 3%, so
Well-
that's what we had to go with, and now we changed that.
true.
No, last year we went up 7.4%.
on hangar rent.
No.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yes, sir.
I thought
Well,
we were
I
limited
made
by
the
the
motion.
3%.
Mike presented the budget, and
Yeah.
he said it was going to cost us 7.4% to operate.
Okay,
And he recommended that we only go up 4.5. And I said, if it's gonna cost us 7.4%,
Then that's what
then
we ought
that's
to go
what
with.
we need to do, and you actually seconded it.
Oh, great. Look how, you see what I do?
And you
Don't
figured
get me
it
off
out
here.
and said, that's gonna cost me $18 more a month.
Oh, it would have been more than that.
Well, what
I mean, you got a good
I'm just
memory,
saying,
but-
you figured it out
Yeah.
and said it, and mine's gonna go up this amount.
Yeah,
But you seconded it,
okay.
but it went up 7.4% last
So
year.
we're doing 17.4% in 2 years, and that's even worse.
No, well, actually, since I've been here 3 years, it's gone up 13%
Okay.
since I've been here 3 years.
So, think about it this way. You're talking about, when we're talking about these percentage increases, that's our income,
Right.
because we're going back now, as far as expenses, we looked at payroll for the staff is 3.4%. That's
Right.
all that was in the budget.
Right.
But some of those other expenses were based on what we knew historically, and then if we knew something else was coming up potentially, we may have rounded it a little bit. So we didn't increase our expenses a lot at all this year.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think we're pretty frugal, but you didn't know the insurance company was gonna raise, what, $20,000, or how much did it go up?
It went up actually 30 to 40
Yeah.
Okay.
in 1 year.
So here's the other thing you gotta think about. So the
Yeah.
budget that you've got presented before you, if you want to go in and change that amount
Then you gotta
to a
rework all the
lower
numbers.
amount, then that's gonna change that contingency fund in a pretty big way, because now you've changed that income. Now we gotta go back in and say, well, wait a minute, okay, what can we do? Because I don't want a negative down there on the bottom line.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just the reality of
It's the cost of doing
the cost
business.
of doing business.
But it is frustrating. If you rent an apartment, periodically that company will come through and replace appliances, they'll paint, they do all this. We're renting garages for airplanes. And and this isn't anything
Yeah.
personal, we're at the mercy of the system.
Yep.
And this is
My
still
hangar,
cheaper
this
than going down
explains
the
why.
street.
Yeah, this explains why my hangar rent has probably doubled in the last 6 years. I think I was paying $260, and I'll be paying $424, but it's just the cost.
A hangar, anybody who pays rent on a hangar is paying significantly less per square foot than what you have in any
Yep.
storage.
No, I
So-
agree. The guy telling me about Hurlong, his is going to $550 a month, so
Oh, I
his
know.
is
I know.
over $100 more.
And
than
that's
mine.
why, and here's the thing, and I know we're being recorded, I don't care if anybody hears it, but I came to a realization, okay, I wasn't flying. My airplane became a hangar queen,
Right.
and I realized that, okay, I'm tired of paying interest, or insurance, and, my lease,
Right.
and all the other costs associated with it. And so I made the decision, okay, I'm not flying that much, I'm gonna sell it.
Okay.
And I think some other people may have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we do it every day in our budgets,
Yeah.
a lot of us.
Well, I'm
So-
going to add a couple
But,
other
well,
things.
wait a minute, let me just finish
Okay.
with this. So there may be some people that it says, okay, I gotta pull the trigger, I gotta make a decision whether I'm gonna keep flying,
True,
I'm gonna keep
true.
my hangar. Because we got a waiting list for somebody to
That's
step in there right
exactly what I
now
was just
Yeah.
going to say.
Yeah.
and take that hangar.
Yeah.
So,
I get calls weekly.
Well, maybe we can do this. We pass it this year, that'll be 17.3%, you're saying total in
Yep.
2 years. And
It
it's
was
just
7.4
inflation, everything's going
last
up.
year.
Maybe next year we'll be in a better situation and we don't have to take such a
I
big
actually
bite.
would agree with that.
I hope that something will
So-
happen over here,
Here's another
and
thing.
those people will start paying a reasonable amount.
Where in the state of Florida is in a bad situation in terms of wait lists. There's nobody, I don't think, within 200 nautical miles of this airport that has a hangar. I get calls weekly.
spare hangar.
You're right, empty hangars to use.
Empty hangar, yeah.
Empty hangar.
So I know one of the things that the Florida, I don't think it's actually the Florida Airports Council, but we call it the CFASP. It's the regional airports. The airport managers get together and talk about what issues are going on at your airport. It's actually very useful. I had not seen other places before, but one of the topics that was brought up here 2 months ago that I think is going to get more serious is every airport has probably 25% of their aircraft that never leave the hangar. They just sit in there, and we call those hangar queens. But my point is that the FAA doesn't really have very strict rules on how you could evict somebody. As long as they have a registration, the FAA pretty much says that's all you need. But I think, you know, the state of Florida and even the FAA in some instances is they're getting so much pressure to build these hangars because they don't exist that they're going to have to go back through and say, well, okay, one thing we could do is tell Jim that, hey, your airplane hasn't moved in 12 months. You know, it's got flat tires, or you're 80 years old, not that we, you know, discriminate on your age, but
I got some classes.
But my point is that you might have to get into a program where you give them 18 months to either sell the airplane, get it airworthy so it's flying, or it goes outside in 18 months. So they open it up for, and my point being is that you're opening up hangars for active aircraft that are buying more fuel.
Well, me not being a pilot and not owning an aircraft, aren't you supposed to have annuals done?
Yes, but the FAA doesn't use that as a determining factor. They just has to have a current registration. We have a database that we go into every airport in the whole country and puts in what tail number is at your airport. So we've got like 50 something here. And at the end of the year, they check that database, and they also cross-reference other airports so they know if Zephyr Hills and Keystone are claiming the same airplane, you lose credit for that. But my point is that if it is a airplane that doesn't have an active registration, they take it off your list. It's not eligible. So I don't know if there's this is something we're going to be looking into, but I don't know if there's a way for the airport
Rex,
to adopt.
To clarify your question, yes, every airplane that is flying to be considered airworthy to fly has to have an annual inspection every 12 calendar months. This is true. I think the bottom line is that we're all talking about is, everybody hates to see the cost of anything going up, whatever they got to pay. I do too, just like the next person. But we need to be able to afford the operation of the airport, and that's part of it.
The reason I asked about that was, since you're on a monthly lease, most people are out here now, even though we changed the lease for everybody. Can we make it a rule that if you don't have an annual done on it, that you have 6 months?
I don't know. I need to check. That's a good question.
To get an annual, and if you don't get it in 6 months, we're terminating your lease because you're a month-to-month person.
But
you don't have a 30-year lease.
Right. Yeah. But even an annual doesn't mean that they're flying it. That's a whole other.
Well, but at least at that point, how much does an annual cost?
It varies.
Depends
on the airplane.
It depends on the state of the airplane and the size of the airplane.
Mine's about 1,500, but it's a
Okay,
single engine
but
fixed
that's
gear.
what I'm getting. That's what I'm
But if you do
getting
that
at.
with Grant's 310, it's $10,000.
Okay, but that's what I'm getting
That
at.
kind of forces their hand.
That's what I was saying.
I get you.
If you make them have that annual, not only are they having to pay
Kind of
extra
feel the
for it,
pain. Yeah,
they're going to have it up and have it fixed.
right.
Okay, and to pass the annual, because if it's not airworthy,
Can't fly.
you can't fly.
Yeah,
All right.
he'd have checked.
All right, that's another discussion.
Yeah.
So let's get back to the budget. Any other questions for Mr. Kuhn about the budget?
No.
Do I hear a motion to approve the budget that has
I'll
been
make the
presented by the
motion.
airport manager? Mr. Seamer
Make a motion.
moved.
To
Motion to approve
Approve the budget as presented,
for
I'll second.
2024, 2025.
2024 to 2025.
And does that
I
include
second.
the amendment for her forestry stuff, or is that just a shift?
No, that's taken care of.
Okay.
It's
Yep.
a shift.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So who seconded that?
I did.
Mr. Dawson? All right, any other questions? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And just to follow up too, Craig and I had some conversation actually before we even had these public comments of having a tenant get together sometime in the fall and, time fellowship, but also an opportunity for Craig and any of us to be there and explain in more detail. And
Sure.
Craig's already started this conversation with some of the tenants about, okay, here's how these numbers came about, and here's what generated that. So we're going to do a better job of just communicating, presenting that information, and I believe everybody feels very comfortable with Craig and his experience, and he did a great job on the budget. He and Lori.
Yeah,
he
Lori
wasn't
helped out a lot
exaggerating
with that.
about the hours. I mean, it's.
Make sure
We would
you-
think it would get easier every year. When we finally went to QuickBooks, it would be easier, but
There's no good forecasting tool in QuickBooks.
yeah, that's one of the other challenges too. But anyway,
All right.
all right. The next item. Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. The last thing is board member comments. The only thing I have is for us to set the date for the September meeting. Labor Day falls
City
in
of Keystone,
right there.
Charlie.
I'm sorry, Charlie. Did you have something?
I had a short 45-minute PowerPoint.
Our internet's down, so we'll table that to next
We're
month.
on hour 3. Keep it
No,
going.
nothing significant to report.
All right, thank you, sir. So for September, we are looking at September the 10th,
Yes.
since Labor Day falls on the 2nd. A lot of folks may be out and about. Is the consensus of the board to change that date to September 10th?
Yes.
Everybody agree?
I'm okay
Yes.
with that.
Yeah,
All
that'll
right.
work.
Everybody good? Okay. All right, that's all I had. Any other board comments?
I just have one comment. Just a kind of little update there. I had worked with Mr. Van Zant there and with the county, with Clay County, and they did approve us getting an AED. And they were supposed to get in contact eventually with
Eventually.
Craig. Yeah, so we've kind of got a location for it, and they're going to handle everything. They'll come in, they'll install it, they bring in all the equipment, they'll periodically inspect it, they'll replace any equipment we have with it and all. So it's a nice upgrade that we'll have, and it didn't cost us anything. So
That's
we're just
great.
kind of
Very
at the
good.
mercy. I believe Mr. Van Zandt was able to get 4 of them for the city, and one of them was designated for here. So that's a good
That's
positive
great.
thing
It's
there.
something we really need to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
really.
Excellent.
And when that time comes, once we get that, I'm hoping that I'll be able to be around, be here whenever they do come in. And I don't know what all they'll provide with it, but I don't mind. I'm not certified to be able to teach classes, but I can give like a uncertified class, I guess. For the most part, the nice
I
thing
think
about
it's pretty
yeah, AEDs are very
Yeah.
very self-explanatory, and
Audible instructions.
yeah, the beauty of them is they
that.
tell you everything.
Kick
you
the
know what I mean?
guy.
Yeah, so
Touch on a few
yeah,
times.
and as far as for like our employees and stuff that we have here, they're here on a regular basis and all that. I don't mind doing that just because
I
of my
think for
background.
sure we should do that with the employees. for
Yeah,
sure.
so it again, they're very basic and they're great because they tell you everything to do, all the steps.
Yeah,
So,
right.
A lady at the Sheriff's Senate meeting last Thursday night down at First Baptist Church actually brought one in and was doing the regular CPR and the AED. She works for UF Health,
mhm.
she's a fire person too. So.
The
All right,
next
any other
thing-
comments? Board comments?
I know the meeting's gone too long. The next thing we need to do is Craig to get the word out and do that periodically to let everybody know, because if somebody does have a medical event, before they start calling 911, they can call the FBO and grab that thing and go. And I assume it'll be here on the wall somewhere.
Yeah, between the main office here, in the hallway going towards the pilot's lounge,
Okay.
because with that being open, or being available 24/7, figure that'd be a good spot for it. And if during business hours, you could just make a quick, jaunt right down
Right.
the hallway right there.
I don't think anybody'd mess with it though, a transient coming in, because remember that's 24-hour access.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that won't be an issue, whatever. But
But on the
They have
weekend,
these.
if somebody needed it, they were out here and they knew it was in there, they could get in and get to it.
And actually, I do have one other thing on that note. I'm sorry, I apologize because I know everybody's ready to go. Hopefully, this will be real quick. It has been brought to my attention on the security side of things. When you said that, it just refreshed my memory. It has been brought to my attention that there's an issue with, we've had somebody giving out gate codes for the tenant gate. I've talked with Craig a little bit, and we're still looking at some things or whatever, and I just kind of wanted to put it out in front of the board as far
Are
as.
you sure, or is it an allegation that was going on?
I don't have social media, but it's been informed back to me that I guess there's stuff being put out on social media, whether it be Facebook or some sort of social media that if somebody needs the gate codes to get into the tenant gate,
Okay,
contact.
Can I speak to that real quick?
Mhm.
So I believe you're talking about the powered paragliders.
And I don't know who it is. I've not been told who
Yeah.
exactly.
So
who it is.
I came out here on a Saturday and had a talk with a couple of people, one of which was supposedly broadcasting this, and reminded him, so here's where we get into complicated area. Believe it or not, we can trespass people from coming through our gates or coming onto our property. But because we accept DOT funding and FAA, we cannot trespass them from using the runway, using the gas pump. I mean, it would have to be pretty extreme. So this individual was paying a fee to come in our gate with his truck and his trailer and his powered paraglider several years ago. And he has been flaunting it with the good group that we have here that follows the rules and pays their
Dues.
their annual dues. And so I called him out here. They called me and said, he's here now. He and another guy that's kind of I wouldn't call them troublemakers, but they're just they just wing it and they do whatever. And one of them is alleged to have done that on Facebook. So I told him, and what I found out is they didn't drive in with the truck or the trailer. They flew in from Hurlong Airport. That's a long ways in a powered paraglider, but it can be done. And I said, okay, you're not in any violation, but I said, we do not want to hear, if we find out that you're giving out that gate code, you will be banned from here, probably trespassed, and there may even be a call to the sheriff's office. This is not yours to open up to the public.
Mm-hmm.
So he assured me that if there was some misunderstanding, he apologized. So I can give you his name through Craig later if you want. And if you want to reach out, I don't, Lori may still have a phone number for him on file. But yeah, they had told me, okay, he's here again, so I just dashed out here on a Saturday morning and we had a little, as somebody said earlier, a come to Jesus meeting, and it's like, this is what our expectations are. And we cannot prevent them from flying. They can use, that's just like using Interstate 75 or 95. But what I did tell them is we can prevent you from coming in our facilities here. You can use the restroom down by the pump. You can use the pump. And other than that, you won't be allowed on any of our. And I said, we don't want to go there. We don't want to do that. But I think he got the message. But if you'd like his information, I can provide it to Greg later, and y'all can reach out as a follow-up.
It becomes, continues to be a problem, I can see, where we could address that or whatever. But if it's been addressed or whatever, and y'all feel pretty confident about it, I just figured that it'd be something that needed to be brought up to the board to talk about, because that may be a simple solution to just going to somebody and saying, hey, you can't do this. This is not.
Well, it might not hurt for you to call, and there's two of them, and because he was doing a lot of stuttering and backpedaling. I think he did tell people. He didn't publish any number that they were aware of, but I think he did tell people, if you want to come in, I got the gate code. So maybe I'll get Craig the names and let him see if he can get numbers, and then you contact him. That'll be helpful.
Okay.
Because one board member's already talked to him, the second one, now they know it's serious.
Yeah.
Well, let's make sure Craig talks to him first.
Yeah, and I'm okay.
No, I talked
I-
to Craig before I took any of this action.
Okay.
I just told him, you know,
I
and
know.
I asked if it was okay.
I know, but he's the airport manager.
Right.
We're just overseeing things.
Right.
So let's let him handle it on that level first.
Okay.
And if it continues to be a problem, I'll just ask Greg, mention it to me and I'll come back to the
Or
board.
maybe
with it,
you'll both
whatever.
meet with him.
Well,
Yeah,
if it's a problem,
and-
he can bring it back to the board and we can have a discussion about it,
Mhm.
but I think he's the one that needs to be handling it. And if he has to call the sheriff's department, he can do that too, so. All right, anything else?
One real quick thing. I'm sorry, Rex.
No, go ahead.
I saw your hand go up. So I am looking into, right now, the keypads, except for one at the firm gate, the keypads do not store any date, gate code, time. They're just codes. Either the code's good and the gate opens or not. I've gotten a quote for an upgraded keypad that I'll bring to the board eventually, or actually it might fall within my purview, but it's going to give, I think we need to think about regularly upgrading these keypads to something that's got that capability. Yes, we have cameras, but that sometimes they don't catch a license plate. You can't see who it was, but if they didn't put a keypad, there would be a record of that, what time it was and what code they used. Anyways, go ahead, Rick. That's all I have.
I was just wondering why I didn't have a committee anymore.
Because we haven't said it.
I thought we
We're
had to go
reworking
through by the bylaws, we had to go through and the board had
Assign
to do it.
I don't think the board does it. I'll look.
I believe if, I got the bylaws right here if you want me to read them.
I don't.
Mine was it cut,
What was what cut?
my committee.
Well, she took your place,
Who,
Ms. Hall.
what committee
as far
was
as
she gonna have?
Natural resources.
What committee was she gonna have?
She was gonna have natural resources.
So you were gonna remove me from natural resources and give it to her?
Actually, you did that.
Right. And she was going to take legislative liaison because she was taking Charlie Van Zant's place.
Not necessarily.
So what committee am I on?
I haven't assigned you one yet. All right? All right.
Can we
anybody-
have a
anything
discussion after this meeting?
else? Sure.
Okay.
We'll let Mr. Van Zandt, if he can hang around, be a part of it.
Can't wait.
Any other comments? All right,
Good.
we are adjourned, 9:07.
Okay.
Oh, and I want everybody to know, NHC Rockland has 2 AEDs. One is located on my side, over there on the shipping receiving side, right next to our internal door by the Centos. I think it's very clearly marked, and then there's also one in Flight Ops.
Thank you.